expand. The first time he came here, he would never have dared open his mouth, let alone ask the question he just had. Back then, his cultivation base was too low, and it was only by lucky coincidence that he was able to come here at all. Now, though, he was a second severing cultivator with a second true self at the peak of Tao seeking. In this age, with immortals incredibly rare in the lands of South Heaven, the peak of Tao seeking deserved to be called the pinnacle level of power. Meng Hao stood on the same pedestal as the most powerful experts of South Heaven. And that was not speaking of the southern domain, but planet South Heaven as a whole. Meng Hao looked calmly at the endless sheets of lightning between him and the bronze cauldron, then stepped forward. As soon as he entered the lightning, shocking rumbling sounds surrounded him, and endless lightning shot toward him. Smacking sounds echoed as the bolts slammed onto him, like writhing white snakes that, from a distance, looked almost like a tempest surrounding Meng Hao. He advanced slowly, but every step was firm and stable. Soon he had advanced 10 measures, each measure roughly 3 meters. The rumbling grew more intense, and the lightning bolts more numerous. The pressure was intense, and even Meng Hao couldn't help but frown after 20 measures. He felt his body spasming but knew he could proceed. However, based on his calculations, after 300 measures he would go no further. The ancient voice once again rang out, filled with coldness. You are currently 1,000 measures away from the cauldron. Based on your level of strength, the most you can reach is 300 measures. The sensible thing would be to give up now. If you do something completely moronic, then you will either end up dead or seriously wounded. Actually, said Meng Hao coolly, if I really wish to traverse this path of lightning, well, it's not that difficult. He waved his sleeve and the air behind him rippled. In the blink of an eye, his second true self stepped forward to stand next to him. Lightning fell around them, but the second true self wasn't harmed in the least. Not even its hair or the edges of its garments stirred. HNHH, within the huge cauldron, the ancient voice seemed momentarily struck speechless. The soul of an immortal, it then exclaimed. In conjunction with the words, the lightning in the area grew even more shocking. Suddenly, the lightning merged together to form a man who hovered in midair. He was an old man with indistinguishable features. Only his outline was visible, but he seemed to be the lord of the lightning here, emanating a shocking pressure that suggested he could wield equally shocking power. No, not the soul of an immortal, murmured the old man. It's a clone, and yet also not a clone. This is a fleshly body created with some secret art, raised to a pinnacle of power after which the soul of a true immortal was inserted into it. When Meng Hao heard the old man's musings, his eyes went wide. Clearly, the old man could pick up on various clues to piece together the truth. False immortals are common, but true immortals are very rare. With this immortal clone, you definitely qualify to take the cauldron. However, the cauldron itself has no soul. Whoever touches it for the first time will find part of their soul extracted to become the essence of the cauldron spirit. Are you sure that you want your immortal clone to touch the cauldron? The old man gazed steadily at Meng Hao. Meng Hao frowned, muttering to himself. According to the old man, if his second true self touched the cauldron, part of his soul would split away. That meant the cauldron would not belong to Meng Hao, but to the true immortal soul. Furthermore, that meant that, although he would most likely be able to use the cauldron, it wouldn't be his. This old guy is pretty mysterious, thought Meng Hao. Regardless of what he says, I can't trust him completely. After more thought, he looked down at his right arm and the lightning dancing across it. Occasionally, lightning would be absorbed into his arm, giving rise to a tickling sensation. His right arm, it seemed, was strong enough to absorb the lightning. Meng Hao's eyes began to glitter. My 9 heavens treasured body seal needs to absorb vast quantities of magical items. Could it be that I can actually absorb the lightning from this place? Heart pounding, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. When they opened, his 9 heavens treasured body seal was fully rotating. As soon as he employed the art, the lightning around him acted as if it had found a drain to pour down, as if his body were a black hole. In the blink of an eye, all the lightning began falling directly onto Meng Hao. Apparently, Meng Hao was able to consume it all. He trembled as pain stabbed through him. The 9 heavens treasured body seal really was absorbing the lightning, which flowed through his body and merged into it. Enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, and he trembled the entire time. Then his eyes began to glow with an intense light. I'm a bit stronger, he thought. About as much as I would be by absorbing a few dozen spirit-severing treasures. He took a deep breath, realizing that this place would be extremely dangerous to anyone except someone who cultivated the 9 heavens treasured body seal. To him, It was a location of incredible good fortune. Meng Hao immediately sent his second true self back to its original position, then looked up at the old man formed from lightning. "Senior, I think I will make an attempt alone," he said. With that, he stepped forward into the rumbling. Lightning fell, and Meng Hao's body trembled. The nine heavens treasured body seal spun into action once again, and the lightning was absorbed. The pain of the lightning dancing through his flesh and blood made him shiver. However, his eyes shone with persistence. Enduring the pain, he continued on, one measure at a time, until he reached 100. 100 measures was 300 meters. More lightning now fell in vast sheets. Meng Hao was submerged in it, barely visible from a distance. Within the lightning, the power of the nine heavens treasured body seal flowed through him. His fleshly body writhed as the lightning danced, boring into him over and over, and he could clearly sense his fleshly body growing stronger and more powerful. His fleshly body was already at the absolute pinnacle of spirit severing. All he needed was one step forward, and it would be in Tao seeking. "I must take advantage of this opportunity," he thought, his eyes flickering as he continued onward. Up in the sky, the old man made of lightning watched with an expression that grew more serious. A brilliant glow flickered in his eyes. Clearly he had noticed there was less lightning in the area. Although it was only a small reduction, it was something he had never experienced in all the countless years he had been here. "So he can absorb lightning," he thought, shocked. "And not even normal lightning at that, tribulation lightning. He can absorb it and use it to strengthen his fleshly body. What technique does he cultivate to do something like that? Don't tell me. It's one of those legendary heaven-defying fleshly body Taoist magics." By this point, Meng Hao had already traveled to the 900-meter mark. Lightning crashed down onto him the entire time, and he was surrounded by its booming. It was as if countless silver spikes were being stabbed into him nonstop. Even using the expression, 10,000 arrows piercing the heart, would not be an exaggeration. The pain was so intense that Meng Hao's vision began to darken. Despite being surrounded by bright, resplendent lightning, all he could see was darkness. He bit the tip of his tongue to regain some clarity, spit out the blood, and pressed on. Rumble. 1,500 meters. Meng Hao raised his head and roared. His right arm had now fully broken through from spirit severing to Tao seeking. The rest of his body was now pushing the very limits of spirit severing. The lightning in the area had previously spread out for 3,000 meters, but Meng Hao had absorbed a lot of it, and now it only stretched for 2,500 meters. The reduction only went faster after his right arm reached Tao seeking. The 2,500 meters quickly shrank down to only 2,000 meters. Excited, Meng Hao gritted his teeth and pushed forward. He soon reached the 1,800-meter mark. 2,000 meters. An incredible rumbling could be heard as his left arm broke through to the fleshly body of Tao seeking. 2,500 meters. Both legs radiated the aura of natural law, as if they were now connected in some bizarre way to heaven and earth. Both of them were now in Tao seeking. 2,750 meters. Meng Hao was panting as the lightning around him shrank to only 1,000 meters. It was at this point that black lightning bolts smashed down toward him with incredible destructive power. He looked up, his eyes bright red, and let the black lightning slam into him. As soon as the black lightning merged into him, cracking sounds could be heard. Tears spread across his skin. It seemed he would be unable to withstand the lightning and would fall to pieces. Then his eternal stratum kicked in and the wounds healed. Intense pain surged through him, unlike anything he had felt before. He couldn't hold back an anguished howl. Even as he did, rumbling filled his body. Not the sound of him collapsing into pieces, but the shocking rumbling of an incredibly powerful Tao-seeking fleshly body. His limbs and torso all broke through from spirit severing into Tao-seeking. Only his head remained a weak spot, the most difficult area to strengthen. Meng Hao took a deep breath and pushed onward. 2,800 meters, 2,850 meters, 2,900 meters. His head felt as if it were being crushed down upon by the heavens. Countless lightning bolts danced across him, and the nine heavens treasured body seal rotated rapidly. 2,950 meters, 2,999 meters, finally, 3,000 meters. The bronze cauldron was directly in front of Meng Hao. He stood there trembling, surrounded by a mere 300-meter area of lightning. Amid the boundless lightning, he coughed up a mouthful of blood and slowly lifted his hand. Gritting his teeth, he slapped his palm down onto the surface of the bronze cauldron. The huge cauldron thrummed, and the 300-meter area of lightning instantly condensed down onto Meng Hao. Boom! "From now on you belong to me," said Meng Hao, his voice quavering out from within the lightning. Slash expand. Rumble. The lightning in the 300-meter area rushed toward Meng Hao, enveloping him. The lightning elder up in midair watched Meng Hao's actions with sparkling eyes, thoroughly shaken. Then all at once, the enormous bronze cauldron shuddered. Within the lightning, Meng Hao seemed on the verge of being torn to pieces, his skin ripped and about to explode. Just as he was about to, natural law descended and swirled around his head. Now every inch of Meng Hao's person was completely in Tao-seeking. This was a Tao-seeking fleshly body. This Tao-seeking was not as obvious as a Tao-seeking cultivation base, and its influence on natural law was not very intense. However, from this moment on, Meng Hao's body was truly like a Tao-seeking treasure. He could now close his eyes and let any spirit-severing cultivator attack him at will without harming his body in the least. In fact, in all the lands of South Heaven you would be as likely to find a phoenix feather or a killing horn as someone with a fleshly body comparable to Meng Hao's. Not even in the Jai clan could someone like that be found. This was an extremely powerful fleshly body. Meng Hao lifted his head back and roared. In a short moment, all the lightning in the area was sucked into his body, disappearing without a trace. Meng Hao flew up into the air, and though no lightning could be seen on him, looking deep into his eyes you would sense amorphous lightning within. As he hovered there in midair, he cast his senses through his body and felt how terrifyingly powerful it was. He could even sense some of the natural law of heaven and earth. Because this was an ancient blessed land, the natural law here differed from that of South Heaven, so his aura was now more primordial and chaotic than before. It seemed ancient, filled with the passage of years, and the air he let off was one of boundless time. He took a deep breath and looked back down at the enormous bronze cauldron, his eyes flashing. Moments ago, when he placed his hand on the cauldron, he had felt a bit of his soul detach and enter it. As he looked at it now, he could sense some vague, mysterious connection to it. "Rise," he said, raising his hand aloft. Rumble. The enormous bronze cauldron trembled. Creaking sounds could be heard, and fissures spread across the surrounding terrain as it slowly rose into the air, sending vast amounts of dust spreading in all directions like a cloud. As the cauldron rose into the air, its primordial, ancient aura became more and more similar to Meng Hao's. The sight of it caused the old man hovering in midair to gasp. He looked deeply at Meng Hao, then glanced down at the second true self standing not far away. "I am not the spirit of the cauldron," he said lightly. "However, I am its guardian. The truly valuable thing about this treasure is the inner cauldron, mysterious in origin. As for the outer cauldron, my master forged it. Now it belongs to you. Since you have acquired it, you are tied to it by destiny. Time will tell whether you can use the cauldron to achieve the glory my master did. Now that you have obtained the cauldron, my mission is accomplished." His eyes began to grow dim, and his body started to fade away. His voice cool, he continued, "I should have perished long ago. That year, I was the lone survivor of the tribulation lightning, and my soul did not disperse. Now that my mission is complete, I can be reborn. I will travel to the underworld of the fourth mountain and be reincarnated, born once again as a human. Years from now, perhaps you and I will meet again on the road to immortality." He faded away until he was nothing more than dots of light, which flew up into the sky, then disappeared. Meng Hao looked in the direction the old man had departed. He wasn't sure who he was, but couldn't help thinking of the tall man he had seen in the vision all those years ago. For a moment, the two of them had seemed similar. After a moment of thought, Meng Hao looked back at the enormous cauldron. "Shrink," he commanded. The huge cauldron thrummed and began to shrink. When it was the size of a hand, it floated down to rest on Meng Hao's palm. As soon as it touched him, lightning surged out from Meng Hao, and he was immersed in electricity. Within the lightning, Meng Hao's body trembled, and he sensed some of the remarkable abilities of the bronze cauldron. This knowledge seemed to pop into his mind automatically as soon as he touched the cauldron. Form displacement transposition. He gaped for a moment, then pushed down on the cauldron and looked over at his second true self. In that instant, everything went blurry. When he could see clearly again, he was shocked to discover he was still holding the cauldron, but now stood on the ground where his second true self had just been standing. His second true self, meanwhile, hovered in midair where Meng Hao had just been. Incredible, he thought, his eyes going wide. Panting, he looked down at the lightning cauldron, his eyes shining with a strange light. He could immediately tell it would be extremely useful in magical combat. In fact, its usefulness wouldn't be limited to battle. He could use it in many circumstances. It was truly heaven-defying. It has other abilities too, he thought. It can unleash lightning and is incredibly heavy, capable of true crushing. Furthermore, it was created in ancient times. The sturdiness of its materials means other magical items can't even compare. His eyes flickered as he thought of the statues inside the lightning cauldron, as well as the inner cauldron. This is truly a precious treasure, he thought, breathing heavily. He put the lightning cauldron into his bag of holding, then flew into the air. Together with his second true self, he shot into the distance. Moments later, he teleported out of the ancient blessed land and found himself again on the lotus-shaped platform deep in the recesses of the former Black Civ sect. The door was no longer operational and broke into tiny pieces, which vanished. Meng Hao glanced back at the disappearing door, then shot up out of the earth. The Blood Demon sect disciples were waiting outside, and when they caught sight of Meng Hao, they clasped hands and bowed. "Blood Prince, we welcome you back with deep respect." The two Ironblood patriarchs sensed something different about Meng Hao, though they weren't sure what. As for the Golden Frost sect patriarch and the third Li clan patriarch, they were now blood clone puppets and had no way to tell. Among the hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators, not a single one could pick up on even the slightest clue. All they could tell was that Meng Hao somehow seemed stronger and more ancient. "The Black Civ sect is destroyed," declared Meng Hao, looking around at the crowds of people. "Next is the Solitary Sword sect." The Solitary Sword sect. The forces of the Blood Demon sect flickered with killing intent, their desire to slaughter burning like wildfire. The hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators were also getting excited. He's actually going to completely wipe out the four powers who allied against him. If the Blood Demon sect does that, then they really will unite the southern domain. Even as the hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators expressed their shock, a glow like that of lightning appeared beneath Meng Hao's feet, and he shot off into the distance, followed by countless beams of light that were the Blood Demon sect disciples. Several days later, the sky outside the Solitary Sword sect began to rumble. The clouds collapsed as a mighty gale-force wind swept through the area. A storm seemed to be gathering above the Solitary Sword sect. The sect was completely sealed. Disciples inside were not permitted to leave, and the entire sect was poised as if to face a mortal enemy, everything sealed to protect against reprisals from the Blood Demon sect. The mood in the Solitary Sword sect was gloomy and distressed. Everyone was nervous. Only a few tens of thousands of disciples remained, all of them on edge. The sect's Tao-seeking patriarch was dead, and the strongest people left in the sect were their three spirit-severing cultivators, including Sir Jian. 1. Sir Jian was introduced in Chapter 715. He was among the people who ganged up on the Blood Demon sect patriarchs while Meng Hao was missing. After Meng Hao returned, he was quickly cowed. If you recall, in Chapter 717, Meng Hao had a staring contest with Gu Tianxiang, and Sir Jian got caught in the middle and was injured. When they saw the beams of light flying through the air that were the Blood Demon sect, they knew they could do nothing to fight back. They could only hope their grand spell formation, designed to protect the sect, could stand up to the revenge-bent Blood Demon sect. The air outside the sect rippled as tens of thousands of beams of light approached. Meng Hao was in the vanguard, the murderous air around him thick. His eyes flashed with killing intent as he glanced over the Solitary Sword sect. In this part of the southern domain, the mountains stuck straight up like swords. In the middle of the sect stood a shocking mountain surrounded by thin mist. Through the mist, the sect appeared bleak and desolate. Although the mist appeared to be thin, it was actually the first spell formation of the Solitary Sword sect's grand spell formation. The Blood Demon sect disciples behind Meng Hao joined their voices together into a raging sound that boomed like waves through the Solitary Sword sect. "Surrender or die." There was no response. However, the thin mist surrounding the Solitary Sword sect began to spin, transforming into numerous swirling dragons. The dragons rapidly merged together, forming an enormous sword dragon. The dragon was lizard-like, gigantic enough to cover the entire sect. Its back was covered with innumerable great swords that stuck up like needles. It was green and shocking to the extreme. As soon as it appeared, it raised its head and roared at Meng Hao. 1. Sword dragon could also be translated Stegosaurus. However, I have seen Chinese art in which such creatures are not stegosauruses. Although there is no way to know exactly what Zhen envisioned, he did describe it as having swords sticking out of its back and looking like a lizard. I decided to go with the more literal translation of the characters. Also, there is an obvious connection to the name of the sect, so it seems apropos. Meng Hao's eyes flickered with coldness. He slapped his bag of holding with his right hand, and the lightning cauldron flew out, thrumming, expanding until it was the size of a mountain. Endless bolts of lightning shot out from it, turning the entire sky into a world of lightning. A shocking pressure weighed down, and the sight of the cauldron made Sir Jian and the other two spirit-severing patriarchs extremely nervous. The other disciples were shocked to the core. However, one man in a far corner of the sect did not seem nervous at all. He looked almost like an old man but was in fact middle-aged. He had a stubbly beard and looked lonely. Although he was a solitary sword sect disciple, he wore no sword at his side. The only thing he had was a flagon of alcohol from which he drank. He stared at what first seemed an ordinary boulder resting a bit further up the mountain. However, upon closer inspection, a person was visible inside the boulder, the same person who existed for all eternity in his heart. "Junior brother," the man said, "kill them. Kill everyone in the solitary sword sect. Avenge my master and pay for my crimes." With a bitter smile, he took another long swig of alcohol. As the shocking lightning cauldron expanded, more and more lightning appeared, causing everything to tremble. The Blood Demon sect disciples, as well as the hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators who came to observe, were flabbergasted. They looked on in awe as the lightning cauldron sped toward the solitary sword sect's sword dragon. "Rumble! Stand firm," roared Sir Jian. "All disciples, pour full energy into the spell formation," cried another of the three solitary sword sect patriarchs. Tens of thousands of disciples gritted their teeth and poured all their energy into the spell formation. Instantly, the sword dragon looked even more corporeal than before. Everyone watched as the lightning cauldron descended toward the sword dragon, which roared and charged up to meet it in midair. Shocking booming sounds rang out. Gasps rang out in all directions when the sword dragon slammed into the lightning cauldron and began to shatter. It couldn't stand up to the lightning cauldron in the slightest, and its entire body collapsed into fragments in the blink of an eye. It was destroyed as easily as crushing dry weeds. This chapter was sponsored by Joseph Small, Song Yi Gu, and LB. Chapter 754, The Tale of Chen Fan. The lightning cauldron crushed the sword dragon amid incredible rumbling, then struck the solitary sword sect spell formation head-on. Ripples spread through the air, and to cultivators watching from outside, the solitary sword sect distorted and looked as though it might be ripped apart at any moment. Inside the sect, the three patriarchs trembled and coughed up blood. The tens of thousands of solitary sword sect disciples also trembled, their faces pale as they spit up mouthfuls of blood. "Second spell formation," cried Sir Jian, his voice echoing throughout the sect. Immediately, tens of thousands of disciples produced medicinal pills to consume. They knew deep in their hearts that this battle would determine whether the solitary sword sect survived or was destroyed. If their spell formation could hold, they could continue unsealed in their mountain. If it could not hold, the solitary sword sect would be wiped from the southern domain. Of course, there was also the possibility of surrender. As the forces of the solitary sword sect unleashed the full scope of their power, countless sword beams appeared from within the ground, the mountains and the buildings, from every corner of the sect. There were more than 100,000 of them, and they flew out to circulate around the entire sect like a tempest. As the tempest raged, the swords merged, forming the shocking image of a gigantic greatsword. It was more than 30,000 meters long, and the entire solitary sword sect fit inside of it. It was essentially a sword-shaped shield. Meng Hao's expression was the same as ever as he gestured into the air. The lightning cauldron shrank and returned to him. When it touched down onto his palm, lightning instantly surrounded him. "Break that formation," he said coolly. The Golden Frost sect patriarch and the third Li clan patriarch charged ahead. As they neared the sword shield, they waved their hands, exploding peak Dao-seeking cultivation base power outward. Booms echoed as tens of thousands of Blood Demon sect disciples attacked too. Divine abilities and magical techniques descended like rainfall, slamming into the solitary sword sect's grand spell formation. Meng Hao sent his thoughts out to control his second true self, who suddenly appeared along with the wooden time sword, and then immediately shot into the fray. The combined power of tens of thousands of cultivators, including three peak Dao-seeking cultivation bases, slammed into the spell formation. Instantly, the solitary sword sect's greatsword shuddered and began to crack. Meng Hao hovered in midair, watching coldly. Booms filled the air for an entire hour, after which the solitary sword sect's greatsword could hold out no longer. Many of the swords making up the sword formation began to collapse. Once the spell formation was no longer complete, its demise only hastened. In the end, a huge explosion breached the spell formation. The flying sword shattered, sending shrapnel flying. The solitary sword sect's grand spell formation now had a huge gap torn into it, through which the true sect was visible, tens of thousands of pale-faced disciples, and the three despairing spirit-severing patriarchs. Boom! Meng Hao's second true self entered the gap. Eyes flashing, he stretched his hands out to the left and right, causing cracking sounds to echo about. The gap tore even larger until the spell formation was completely destroyed. At the same time, the Blood Demon sect disciples charged in like a cloud of blood, ready to slaughter the entire solitary sword sect. In their despair, the solitary sword sect disciples could not even muster the will to resist. It was impossible to say who did it first, but they all dropped to their knees and kowtowed. Surrender, I want to surrender. We surrender. Of the three ashen-faced spirit-severing experts, two laughed bitterly and were about to voice their surrender when Sir Jian's eyes flickered. He performed a minor teleportation, reappearing some distance off next to the middle-aged man with no sword and a flagon of alcohol. As soon as he reappeared, his hand snaked out and latched onto the top of the man's head, his eyes filled with insanity and savagery. "Menghao," he screamed. "This is your elder brother from the Reliance sect, Chen Fan. I know he's your close friend, so if you dare to make a single move, I'll kill him, even if it means I die too." This caused the Blood Demon sect disciples to stop and look coldly over at Sir Jian. Even the solitary sword sect disciples gaped in shock. None of them looked happy, their faces went pale as death. This was especially true of the two other spirit-severing patriarchs, who were completely caught off guard. They knew they were no match for the Blood Demon sect. Their failed attempt to fight back moments ago was clear evidence of that. Surrender was their only option. And yet Sir Jian had pulled this trick, dragging the entire solitary sword sect along with him in provoking the jinx Meng Hao. The two patriarchs' faces instantly fell. "Sir Jian, you must not do this. Sir Jian, you..." Sir Jian's expression grew even more vicious. He glared down at Chen Fan's head, then back at the Blood Demon sect forces and Meng Hao. "Meng Hao, give me the solitary sword sect's immortal puppet. All I want is the immortal puppet. Once I have it in hand, I won't harm a hair on Chen Fan's head." When Meng Hao first laid eyes on Chen Fan again back at the ancient Dao Lakes, he could tell he was in a bad situation. He had wanted to help, but could tell Chen Fan was already dead inside. He had come to the solitary sword sect this day for two reasons: vengeance for the Blood Demon sect and his concern for Chen Fan. "Are you insane?" replied Meng Hao, his face grim. "So what if I'm insane?" Sir Jian roared back, his eyes bloodshot. "I just want the immortal puppet. Hand it over and I'll let him go." Chen Fan's face was pale as he looked over at Meng Hao. He said nothing, but was smiling, the same smile he had worn when he reunited with Meng Hao all those years ago in the southern domain. 1. It was in chapter 179 that Chen Fan and Meng Hao met up again for the first time after parting ways in the Reliance sect. "Junior brother, you've grown up." That was what he had said all those years ago. Now he wore the same smile, and Meng Hao could almost sense the same high-spirited senior brother he remembered from the Reliance sect, the same Chen Fan so focused on the Tao. Hundreds of years had passed in what felt like a flash, and Chen Fan had changed. The one thing that remained was the emotion forged between them back in the Reliance sect. "Meng Hao," said Sir Jian, his eyes filled with maliciousness, "you might be high and mighty now, but your elder brother's life has been filled with bitterness." Seeing the grim look on Meng Hao's face, he relaxed a bit. At first he had worried Meng Hao wouldn't care whether Chen Fan lived or died. Hoping to foster more pity, he coldly continued. "This Chen Fan was once a chosen in the solitary sword sect, even one of the 7 swords. Unfortunately, he should never have fallen in love with Xianling. Xianling was the incarnation of a mountain boulder, and other than the legacy precious treasure, she was the most important treasured item in the solitary sword sect. She was not permitted to foster emotions or desires of the flesh. Were she to do so, she would no longer be a spirit and would separate from the boulder. That would affect the fate of the entire solitary sword sect. After all, according to legend, that stone came from the 9th mountain." As Sir Jian spoke, Meng Hao recalled the first time he came to the solitary sword sect and the beautiful woman he had seen floating down the mountain. 2. Xianling was introduced in chapter 180. Her name literally means mountain spirit. Chen Fan violated sect rules. He fled with the boulder, altering fate and absconding with Xianling. In the end, the solitary sword sect captured them. Then, because of Chen Fan, his master. "Enough," roared Chen Fan. His eyes snapped open and they were shot with blood. Meng Hao's heart trembled. He had known Chen Fan for years, and this was the first time he had seen him so emotional. There was pain in his eyes, even madness, the kind that made Meng Hao recall his own state when he caught sight of Su Qing's discarnate soul back in the Black Civ sect. "Enough," said Sir Jian. "How is it enough? When the fury of the sect came for you, your master took your place. His cultivation base was crippled and he was reduced to a mortal, which was how he died. As for you, if Xianling hadn't threatened to destroy herself and the boulder, well, in the end, she made an arrangement with the sect to spend the rest of eternity as a boulder, never to awaken, all to save your measly little life." "Enough, no more." Chen Fan trembled, tears pouring down his cheeks. Though his expression was one of intense pain, he smiled bitterly, his eyes growing more and more dispirited. He would never be able to forget how his master stood in front of him, bowed his head to the sect and said, "He is my apprentice. I will accept responsibility for his mistake." He had watched wide-eyed as his master's cultivation base was crippled. The man who had once been a powerful nascent soul expert became an old man, a mortal. Until the day he died, his master never complained once. On the contrary, he was as warm and gentle as ever. Unfortunately, that only deepened Chen Fan's pain, a feeling enough to drive him to insanity. His master's son hated Chen Fan with a passion, which was yet another thing that made him wish he could simply die. 1. Chen Fan's master was introduced in chapter 41, when he took Chen Fan to the solitary sword sect. Later, we met his son Zhou Shanyu in chapter 178. It was eventually revealed that Chen Fan had a precious treasure gifted to him by his master, and that the son felt it belonged to him. Later, Zhou Shanyu and his friend were conned by Meng Hao in the events around chapter 184. Chen Fan was filled with hatred. He hated that he was powerless to change what had happened, and hated the solitary sword sect for being too callous. He wanted to die. And yet, he couldn't stop thinking about her. The only thing left to do was drink. In his drunken dreams, he could return to the wonderful times past. He had let his master down. He had let Xianling down. He had let down anyone who had anything to do with him. Meng Hao stood there, taciturn. Now that he understood what had happened to Chen Fan, he understood how someone once so high-spirited and full of mettle could sink into such depression. "Enough," murmured Chen Fan bitterly, bowing his head. "I beg of you, please, enough, please." Sir Jian laughed coldly. "Were it not for Xianling's actions, do you really think you could have committed such a heinous crime and gotten away with nothing more than a shattered nascent soul? Do you think the only price would have been losing the ability to break through to the next stage of cultivation? Your existence is nothing but a tool the sect can use to influence Xianling. Unfortunately, the war with the Blood Demon sect changed things too unexpectedly." Sir Jian looked at Meng Hao. "Only the patriarch knew how to control the boulder. Otherwise, you would never have broken through our spell formation so easily." Seeing Meng Hao grow more focused on his words, Sir Jian began to believe his control of the situation was growing. He looked back at Chen Fan. "You single-handedly drove your master to his death and ruined your beloved, and yet you still say enough." "Shut the hell up," roared Meng Hao. His voice echoed like thunder, his eyes flashing with killing intent. His words made Sir Jian's pupils constrict and his heart seize. He immediately squeezed down with his right hand. However, it was at this exact moment that the lightning cauldron in Meng Hao's hand flashed. Form displacement transposition. What changed positions was not Sir Jian, but rather Chen Fan. Chapter 755. I pray that you find happiness. When the lightning cauldron in Meng Hao's hand began to sparkle with brilliant light and emit a rumbling sound, Sir Jian's face fell, a bad feeling welling up in his heart. Without hesitation, he squeezed down with his hand, planning to stab his fingers into Chen Fan's head, injuring him as a threat to Meng Hao. However, the instant his fingers moved, an incredibly shocking power shot back into his hand. It was as if what he was squeezing was not flesh and blood, but red-hot iron. The backlash made it feel as if needles were stabbing into his palm. Sir Jian was utterly shocked. At the same time, he was astonished to find that, instead of staring at Meng Hao as he had been this whole time, he was now looking at Chen Fan. Heart pounding, he slowly looked down to see his hand resting on Meng Hao's head. His eyes went wide, his scalp numb. He shot back, spooked out of his mind. What divine ability is that? Sir Jian was astonished and terrified. He bit down on the tip of his tongue and spit out blood, using it to flee even faster than before. Trying to run away, said Meng Hao, his eyes flickering with killing intent. He pointed with his left index finger, and his second true self unleashed the wooden time sword. Even if Sir Jian could move faster, it still wouldn't be enough to escape it. It was upon him in the blink of an eye, twisting and distorting everything around it. To his shock, Sir Jian began to wither rapidly. He let out a miserable scream as the wooden time sword stabbed directly through his head. Slaughtered with a solitary sword. Tidy and efficient, not the least bit sloppy. Sir Jian's body withered, his nascent divinity killed. As he fell, it seemed as if 10,000 years passed. He quickly turned to nothing more than dust floating in the wind. There was nothing left to indicate he had ever been. He was completely and utterly dead. The two other spirit-severing experts of the solitary sword sect, along with the tens of thousands of other disciples, were shocked into complete silence. Their faces went pale white, and barely a moment passed before one of the spirit-severing experts gave a start and dropped to his knees to kowtow. "Blood Prince, we wish to surrender to the Blood Demon sect." The other disciples immediately dropped to their knees, hearts pounding and voices trembling as they cried, "Greetings, Blood Prince." Despite the fear in their voices, there were tens of thousands of them, and the sound of their cry rolled out in all directions like a wave. Meng Hao didn't respond. Instead, he looked back at Chen Fan, whose face was downcast, betraying his lack of interest in life. To him, life was a pain he wished to extricate himself from. Meng Hao's heart twinged with pain as he thought back to the eldest brother in his memories. That person hadn't looked like this. He had wholeheartedly sought the Tao and had lofty ambitions. Though at times a bit stuffy and uptight, he was a hero who never hesitated to stand in front of Meng Hao and protect him from danger. That Chen Fan viewed Meng Hao as a junior brother, someone he needed to care for after their sect vanished. He was an elder brother who even worried about Meng Hao finding a wife. "Elder brother," said Meng Hao, his voice soft. Chen Fan was silent a moment before slowly looking up at Meng Hao, then forced a smile onto his face. "Junior brother, you've grown up. I can finally stop worrying. Do you have some time right now? If you do, let's drink a bit." Meng Hao nodded and waved a hand to dismiss the solitary sword sect disciples and the blood demon sect disciples. All of them left the sect and waited outside, cross-legged. The entire solitary sword sect was quiet. Meng Hao and Chen Fan sat down on the mountain peak beneath the strange boulder. Chen Fan produced a flagon of alcohol and handed it to Meng Hao. A complex look filled Meng Hao's eyes, but he wasn't sure how to even begin giving advice, so he simply accepted the flagon and took a long drink. The alcohol was strong and burned like fire as it slid down his throat. Chen Fan looked at the boulder and softly said, "She's your sister-in-law." Meng Hao sat there quietly. As Chen Fan continued, tears began to stream down his face. "We promised each other that, since the path to immortality was filled with so many obstacles and unforeseen twists and turns, it would be better to spend our lives with each other. She's sleeping now and might not wake up in this lifetime, but then again maybe she will. I'll stay here to accompany her. That was our agreement. I let down my master. I was unworthy of him." Chen Fan looked like an old man. More tears poured down his face. He rarely wept, not even when he and Shan Ling were captured and brought back to the sect. When Shan Ling decided to rest and sleep, there were tears in his heart, but they wouldn't come. The first time he truly cried was when his master accepted the punishment for him. The second time he cried was when his master died. The third time was here, in front of Meng Hao. "Elder brother," began Meng Hao, but he wasn't sure what to say, so he stopped. After a moment, a determined look appeared in his eyes, and he raised his right hand. A drop of blood formed slowly on the tip of his finger. When the drop of blood appeared, his face went a bit pale. A scintillating, blood-colored glow appeared, and Chen Fan's eyes went wide. After a moment, his eyes flashed in realization, and he shot to his feet. His expression stern, he cried, "Junior brother, what do you think you're doing? Stop this instant." "Elder brother, I can't do very much to help you. The only thing I can do is help restore your cultivation base. That way your longevity will increase and you can have more time to stay with your beloved." With that, he gestured with his finger. His lifeblood shot forward and merged into Chen Fan's forehead. Chen Fan trembled. Years ago, his nascent soul had been damaged, cracked. Now time seemed to run in reverse. His nascent soul absorbed the blood and the cracks sealed up. The blood didn't just contain some of Meng Hao's life force, it also contained some of the power of his eternal stratum. That power was what restored Chen Fan's cultivation base. Of course, Meng Hao only had a few such drops of lifeblood. If he parted with too many, what was eternal within him would be gone. But Chen Fan was his elder brother. The friendship between them and everything that had happened since meant Meng Hao didn't even hesitate. If he didn't give his lifeblood to Chen Fan, that would mean he wasn't Meng Hao. Chen Fan started trembling, and after a moment coughed up a huge mouthful of blood as his nascent soul instantly reappeared like new. Now that he had a nascent soul again, his cultivation base surged, and his salt and pepper hair turned black. His aged features grew young and heroic again, and he no longer looked like an old man, but middle-aged and bursting with energy. Now he looked more like the Chen Fan that Meng Hao remembered. Caption ID equals attachment / 66133. Align equals align center. Width equals 600. Official ISSTH Chen Fan artwork / caption. Chen Fan gaped at Meng Hao. Junior brother, you. There's no need to talk about it, said Meng Hao softly. You're my elder brother. Chen Fan held his tongue, and after a long moment slowly nodded. He picked up the flagon of alcohol, looked at the boulder and drank. The sky gradually darkened, and eventually the moon rose. When the dawn sun peeked over the horizon, Meng Hao started a conversation. He and Chen Fan chatted about the Reliance sect and all the things that had happened since in the southern domain. They talked about all the wonderful things from the past. When the sun was high in the sky, Meng Hao rose to his feet. Elder brother, I need to go now. If you ever grow weary of being here, you can always find me in the Blood Demon sect. Chen Fan didn't respond at first. He looked at the boulder and the woman who rested inside with her eyes closed. You've grown up, he said softly, and your elder brother has gotten old. Don't worry about me. You follow your path and I'll follow mine. I'll stay here with her until the day I close my eyes for good. When that day comes, junior brother, can you please bury me here? That way I can watch the sun rise and set with her forever. If there is another life after this one, I'll find this place again. Life after life, I'll wait until the day she wakes up. He turned to look deep into Meng Hao's eyes. Junior brother, take care of yourself. Your elder brother isn't good at much, so all I can do is pray that you find happiness. I hope your path leads you to greatness. Meng Hao stared at Chen Fan, his face filled with complex emotions. He had an indescribable feeling in his heart that told him he would never forget that person from the Reliance sect so focused on the Tao. He would never forget the person who stood in front of him to protect him, nor would he ever forget the elder brother of now, standing there softly murmuring his story. Elder brother, take care of yourself, Meng Hao said quietly. He clasped hands and bowed deeply, then turned and left, sighing inwardly. Chen Fan sat down cross-legged and watched Meng Hao leave. Linger, he's my junior brother. In my heart, he's family. I don't have much family, just him and junior sister Sue, only those two. If you still have some awareness of the outside world, then let's pray together that they find happiness. Meng Hao flew out of the solitary sword sect. As soon as he appeared, the solitary sword sect disciples and the blood demon sect cultivators rose to their feet in deep respect. Meng Hao looked over the solitary sword sect and then said, produce strands from your souls and swear blood oaths. After that, you may remain here and become an auxiliary branch of the blood demon sect. Everything will remain as it did before, although your jade slips, ancient records, and legacy items will all be handed over to the blood demon sect. Henceforth, there is no solitary sword sect in the southern domain, only an auxiliary branch of the blood demon sect. The man who sits beneath the boulder on the mountain top is my elder brother Chen Fan. No one is allowed to step even half a pace onto that mountain. No one may disobey him in the slightest. The solitary sword sect disciples voiced their agreement. From the moment they surrendered, they were prepared for this. Their soul strands and blood oaths were organized by the blood demon sect, then transformed into a soul slip, which was given to Meng Hao. Next, the magical items and ancient records in their treasure house were removed, along with their legacy items. Finally, some blood demon sect disciples were stationed in the sect permanently. After that, Meng Hao flicked his sleeve, and the blood demon sect took to the skies. Their next target was the Golden Frost sect. As for his second true self, he had already vanished, sent to a different location by Meng Hao. Chapter 756, Crazy Fatty. In the Golden Frost sect, it didn't matter that the whole sect had been sealed. The disciples still faced difficult decisions. Should they continue to defend their position, or should they leave the southern domain? Should they surrender to the Blood Demon sect or die in battle? The destruction of the Black Civ sect was nothing astonishing. However, the Solitary Sword sect's surrender had been witnessed by hundreds of thousands of southern domain cultivators. Word had spread, and even the sealed-off Golden Frost sect had gotten the news. It didn't take long for the Golden Frost sect to grow alarmed. The least alarmed of all was Li Fugui, though even he was quite nervous. Recent days found him sighing with distress at a loss. The Golden Frost sect had treated him very well from the beginning. He had been given many beautiful, beloved companions, which left him exhausted but happy. On the other hand, Meng Hao had been his brother since their days in the Reliance sect. They had joined the sect together as outer sect disciples. They had caught wild chickens to eat and even ran the general store together. Meng Hao had looked out for him, and that was something he would never forget. The two of them were truly brothers. Now, though, he was in an awkward predicament, unsure what to do. His brother was on the way to destroy the Golden Frost sect, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. A few days after the surrender of the Solitary Sword sect, the Golden Frost sect's only spirit-severing expert, along with Li Fugui's master, personally came to discuss the matter with him. "Sue for peace," said Fatty, gaping in shock at the spirit-severing patriarch who looked quite exhausted. "You're on good terms with Meng Hao. He's the type of person who, despite being cruel and merciless, capable of horrendous massacres, and with an unfathomably high cultivation base, still cares about past friendships. We can verify that from the news about the Solitary Sword sect. Based on what happened with Chen Fan, it's possible to tell a little about what Meng Hao is thinking. Li Fugui, think about it. How has the sect treated you since you joined? We're now facing imminent catastrophe. Hopefully you can step forward bravely and use your friendship with Meng Hao to help us weather this storm. The Golden Frost sect is willing to surrender. Our only request is that we don't become an auxiliary branch, but rather allies. We will do everything we can to comply with the Blood Demon sect, but we want to preserve our core Taoist teachings and doctrines, so our sect won't be wiped from the southern domain. Perhaps years from now we can rise to prominence again. We must fight for that chance." The Golden Frost sect's only spirit-severing patriarch clasped hands and bowed deeply to Li Fugui. Li Fugui's master stood off to the side, watching him. Li Fugui was quiet a moment before nodding seriously. Another day of nervousness passed for the Golden Frost sect. Finally, the clouds seethed outside the sect's grand spell formation, and tens of thousands of beams of light appeared, like a towering sea of blood, bright red as they shot toward the Golden Frost sect. These were the Blood Demon sect disciples. They had destroyed the Black Civ sect and forced the Solitary Sword sect into compliance. Now they turned toward the Golden Frost sect, their hearts filled with the desire to kill. Behind them were the rogue cultivators, even more than before, hundreds of thousands following the Blood Demon sect through the southern domain to bear witness. Outside the Golden Frost sect was an area where the air did not ripple with the distortions of a defensive spell formation, nor was there any enshrouding fog. Instead, an illusion barrier protected it, revealing only the image of a barren mountain. As soon as the Blood Demon sect disciples appeared, before they could even react, a beam of light appeared, and Fatty's round figure was there on the mountain. Don't attack, it's me," he called at the top of his lungs. Seeing the tens of thousands of Blood Demon sect disciples and the hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators behind them left Fatty utterly frightened. Meng Hao looked at Fatty, then glanced over at the Golden Frost sect. It took him only a moment to figure out what they were planning. Inwardly, he had already been having doubts about how to handle them. Fatty was here, and Meng Hao knew that whatever he did to the Golden Frost sect would affect Fatty too. Seeing Fatty appear, Meng Hao waved his sleeve, causing the air around him to distort. He vanished, then reappeared in front of Fatty. A blurriness surrounded them, preventing anyone from seeing clearly what was happening. A faint smile appeared on Meng Hao's face. He looked over Fatty's rotund figure, then laughed. Fatty sighed inwardly with relief, and the two embraced. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for Meng Hao's smile to turn wry. "Your belly is too huge," he said. Fatty was so fat it was hard to hug him. "Yeah, I got fat again," said Fatty, smiling and rubbing his head. "Recently, I've been thinking of trying to lose some weight." He looked past Meng Hao toward the tens of thousands of murderous-looking Blood Demon sect disciples. "So, eldest brother Meng Hao, what do you say we get down to business?" Fatty looked extremely nervous. "Oh," replied Meng Hao, blinking and looking back at Fatty with an enigmatic smile. Fatty sighed, then explained. The sect's spirit-severing patriarch sent me here to sue for peace. How about we don't fight? The sect will surrender as long as they can preserve their core Taoist teachings and doctrines. As the two of them chatted, the disciples of the Golden Frost sect looked on nervously from within their sect, wondering what the result would be. I wonder if Elder Brother Li will succeed or not. Meng Hao really values friendship. He shouldn't have a hard time convincing him. You can't say for sure. Meng Hao is the blood prince of the blood demon sect. He's killed countless people and is cruel and ferocious. There's no way he'll agree to our demands so easily. Even as they discussed the matter, Meng Hao was listening to Fatty make his demands. An even wider smile broke out on his face. Fatty, you're working so hard to represent the sect and sue for peace, but what has the sect offered you in return? Fatty gaped for a moment, then suddenly slapped his thigh. A look of fury appeared on his face. Fudge, you're right. Those bastards didn't offer me anything. All right, Meng Hao, don't agree to anything yet. I'm going back to the sect to tell them the negotiations didn't go well. After they offer young Master Fatty something good, I'll come back. Meng Hao chuckled and shook his head, then flicked his sleeve, causing the blurriness around them to fade. As it cleared, everyone outside could see the two of them. Meng Hao's face darkened and Fatty's eyes gleamed. Realizing it was time to put on the show, he flew into a rage and roared, Meng Hao, how could you be like this? Burning with rage, he turned and headed back to the Golden Frost sect. The faces of the Golden Frost sect cultivators fell, hearts thumping. Fatty angrily returned to the sect, immediately surrounded by anxious-looking disciples. I'm done with that fool, done, cried Fatty. Meng Hao doesn't care about friendship at all. I'm through trying to reconcile with him. Fatty's ranting made the Golden Frost sect cultivators even more alarmed. The only spirit-severing patriarch immediately strode forward and asked. He didn't agree. As soon as I brought up suing for peace, he asked me what authority I had to negotiate for the sect. On what authority? I'm a Golden Frost sect disciple, damn it. What an insult. As he spoke, Fatty's eyes shifted back and forth craftily. The surrounding Golden Frost sect disciples had suppressed themselves too long now. They had placed all their hope on Fatty, and now that he had failed, they couldn't suppress themselves any longer. Well, if he's going to be like that, then let's fight. Yeah, it would be better to die in battle than be insulted like this. Even Elder Brother Li couldn't do anything about it. Let's fight. Fight. Their desire for battle soared, and soon the entire sect was filled with a murderous aura. People even began rotating the sect's spell formations into battle readiness. Fatty was stupefied. He thought he had made things pretty obvious, and was shocked no one had picked up on his hidden meaning. The spirit-severing patriarch stood there silently, looking at Meng Hao floating in midair in the distance, and sighed inwardly. He had no desire for war. The Golden Frost sect didn't come close to matching the Blood Demon sect, but what other options did they have now? Normally, he would have picked up on the hidden message in Li Fugui's words just now, but he was so anxious and alarmed that he simply didn't notice. If we're going to fight, then we should make the first move, said the spirit-severing patriarch, gritting his teeth. Fight now and worry about everything else later. Fatty's eyes went wide, his heart pounding. Realizing things were getting out of control, he quickly stepped forward. Actually, he said, I think there's still some hope. Elder Brother Li, there's no need for further discussion. We're going to fight. Yeah, Junior Brother Li, we've been pushed into a corner. The only option now is to fight. We'll show them who the Golden Frost sect is. We might be down and out now, but we still have the power to fight. Fatty was now extremely nervous. Hey, everybody, you need to listen to me, I think. Li Fugui, there's no need, said the spirit-severing cultivator, his eyes cold. I made an error in judgment. It seems we'll have to fight first before we get a shot at turning this around. Disciples, heed my command. He flicked his sleeve and was about to issue orders when Fatty suddenly lifted his head and roared. Patriarch, give me one more chance. I, Li Fugui, will put my life on the line to secure peace for the sect. He was so nervous his throat was hoarse. Immediately, everyone turned to look at him in shock, even the spirit-severing patriarch. Li Fugui slapped his chest so hard it stung, tears welling up in his eyes. You're an amazing kid, said the spirit-severing expert, clearly moved. You don't need to put yourself in such danger. We will fight them and show them the true power of the Golden Frost sect. That's our only hope. With that, he prepared to give combat orders. Fatty trembled, veins bulging on his forehead. Once again he let out a mighty roar. Don't worry, Patriarch. I'm a disciple of the Golden Frost sect. Even if I die the most cruel death, I will help the sect pass through this crisis. This time I'll just tell that Meng Hao that I'm a disciple of the Golden Frost sect and its future Golden Prince. If he doesn't agree to our terms, I'll kill myself right in front of him." With that, he flew into the air, his face calm and unflinching. A tremor ran through the spirit-severing patriarch, and the other disciples were completely moved to see Fatty's tear-soaked face and calmness in the face of death. "Regardless of whether or not you succeed," said the spirit-severing patriarch, "you are now the Golden Prince of the Golden Frost sect." By this point he felt something fishy was going on, but considering the crisis they were in, he couldn't focus too much on that. Fatty started to get excited. In his opinion, it was time to push things a bit further, so he took a deep breath, ripped off the top of his robe and revealed his rolls of fat. His expression serious and filled with the determination to die for his sect, he cried out, "Patriarch, please bestow me with a titular tattoo. Please carve the characters, Golden Prince of the Golden Frost sect, onto my back." The spirit-severing patriarch stared in shock, and his face twitched. This chapter was sponsored by John Doe, Juanes Santana, Naret Vacureminaporn, and Anonymous. /expand. As soon as the words left Fatty's mouth, all the Golden Frost sect disciples stared in shock. The spirit-severing patriarch's face twitched, then he took a deep breath and with effort spoke as though deeply moved. "What an amazing kid, amazing, the sect will never forget you, you are our hero. Very well, I'll bestow the tattoo unto you." With that, the spirit-severing patriarch waved his right hand toward Fatty, causing the characters Golden Prince of the Golden Frost sect to appear on his back. The characters were carved deeply, causing intense pain that made Fatty clench his teeth and squeeze out some tears. However, he didn't make a sound. Once inscribed, he took a deep breath, then swept his fellow disciples with a meaningful gaze. "I'm going now," he said, "and perhaps I won't return. Even if I die, I will still belong to the Golden Frost sect, whether in flesh and body or in spirit and soul. Fellow disciples, my beautiful, beloved companions, I'm leaving now." With that, he flew out of the sect. As he shot through the air, quite a few disciples wore unsightly looks, and one even gave voice to suspicions. "I'm not sure, but wasn't Junior Brother Lee acting a bit weird just now?" he asked. A few disciples frowned and were about to respond when the spirit-severing expert snorted coldly. "Lee Fugui is willing to risk his life for the sect, and even requested that I give him that tattoo." After mentioning the tattoo, the spirit-severing patriarch paused, struggling internally. He hadn't picked up on the clues at first, but he had lived many years. How could he not see through Fatty's incongruous behavior in the end? It took only a moment of thought for him to understand Fatty was milking the glory for all it was worth. Though he didn't really approve, given the current situation, he couldn't very well say anything. Not only was he forced to hold his tongue, he also had to help cover for Fatty's earlier conspicuousness and make the story seem more convincing. Realizing this, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. "Anyone who has any suspicions can go take his place if they want," he continued. Thinking back on how he had bestowed the tattoo, the spirit-severing patriarch couldn't help but think the whole thing seemed so fake. Why couldn't Lee Fugui put on a more convincing performance, he thought. Damn it all, what the hell is a titular tattoo anyway? Why you? However, given the relationship Fatty had with Meng Hao, he couldn't risk offending him. So he began considering good, justifiable reasons for bestowing the tattoo, reasons everyone would believe. Even as the patriarch wrestled with such thoughts, Fatty flew out of the sect, his face as calm and unflinching as ever. Inside, though, he was grinning ear to ear. "Ha ha ha," he laughed inwardly. "Grandpa Fatty outsmarts them again, especially that titular tattoo thing. It completely sets the matter in stone. In the future, if anyone dares deny I'm the Golden Prince, all I have to do is take my shirt off." Feeling quite pleased with himself, he flew toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao waited, hovering in midair. When he saw the shining white ball of flesh flying toward him, he gaped. Staring quizzically at Fatty as he arrived, he waved his hand, blurring the area around them, then noticed the characters tattooed on his back. "Well, what do you think?" said Fatty, his expression one of wild joy. Meng Hao stared for a moment, then sighed. "What's wrong?" asked Fatty, not looking pleased. He subconsciously produced a flying sword and started filing at his teeth. "How can you have such low ambitions?" said Meng Hao with a wry smile. "Why didn't you have them write sect leader of the Golden Frost sect?" Fatty stopped filing his teeth, his eyes going wide. He roared, eyes bloodshot. Damn it, how come I didn't think of that? This won't do. Meng Hao, don't agree to the terms yet. "Hold on a moment, I'm going back to the sect." He turned, about to speed back, when Meng Hao reached out and grabbed his arm. Meng Hao looked speechlessly at him, then thought back to how bumbling Fatty had been back in the Reliance sect, and suddenly understood everything. "Golden Prince is fine," he said quickly. "Look at me, I'm a sect prince too." Worried Fatty would keep messing things up, he projected his voice across the entire Golden Frost sect. "Golden Frost sect, considering that Li Fugui has become your Golden Prince, I will exempt you from the death penalty for your act of besieging the Blood Demon sect. From now on, you are part of the Blood Demon sect. I shall permit you to retain your core Taoist teachings and doctrine, but you must immediately provide soul strands and blood oaths." In response, the Golden Frost sect spell formations opened to reveal the sect. The spirit-severing patriarch, along with tens of thousands of disciples, flew out and bowed to Meng Hao. "We will obey the decrees of the Blood Demon sect." The Golden Frost sect surrendered, and its members gave soul strands and blood oaths. Fatty became the sect's Golden Prince, and though some didn't approve, no one dared say anything. The threat posed by Meng Hao was far too great. Their discontent was mild. Had Meng Hao personally forced them to raise Fatty to Golden Prince, the situation might have been different. Resolving the issue this way was not the most ideal method for Meng Hao, but he could accept it. Unfortunately, he felt a bit guilty toward the Blood Demon sect disciples. They had come to exact revenge, but in the end hadn't been able to kill anyone. Their fury and resentment could only fester in their hearts, with nowhere to vent. Killing intent flickered in Meng Hao's eyes. "Next, the Li clan," he shouted. He had never had a good impression of the Li clan, especially of Li Daili, whom he had met many years before. Setting aside their tangential relationship, the only other person from the Li clan Meng Hao had anything to do with was the Li patriarch inside the blood mask, who had been turned into a soul of lightning. Meng Hao turned to the Blood Demon sect cultivators behind him, the disciples who had suppressed their killing intent too long, and said, "There will be no surrender for the Li clan." With that, he flicked his sleeve and flew into the air. The tens of thousands of Blood Demon sect cultivators turned into beams of light as they followed him, consumed by their desire for carnage. In the battle for the Blood Demon sect, they had narrowly escaped with their lives, and most of their comrades had died. Their desire for revenge now burned hot and deep. This was an enmity that could only be washed away with blood. The Black Civ sect had essentially been empty. The Solitary Sword sect surrendered. The Golden Frost sect had Li Fugui. They could understand Meng Hao's decisions, but their desire to kill had been held back too long and needed release. The place it would be released was none other than the Li clan. There was no peace and quiet in the Li clan. Everything was abuzz with activity. Tens of thousands of clan members remained alive, and the sole remaining early Tao-seeking patriarch had been awakened from sleep to take charge. They were attempting to teleport the entire clan out of the southern domain. They had assumed sealing the clan off from the outside world would be enough to prevent reprisals from the Blood Demon sect. But the Solitary Sword sect spell formations had crumbled, destroying their hopes. They suddenly realized the Li clan could not remain in the southern domain. They considered surrender, but once the Golden Frost sect did that very thing, the Li clan's Tao-seeking patriarch realized a great catastrophe was heading their way. "The Blood Demon sect mobilized to exact revenge," said the patriarch. "There was no slaughter at the Black Civ sect, Solitary Sword sect, or Golden Frost sect. That means the Li clan is in grave danger." Without hesitation, preparations began to teleport the clan out of the southern domain. Unfortunately, at almost the same moment their teleportation portal began to rotate. A massive rumbling filled the air, and an enormous parasol formed of magical symbols appeared above the clan. The parasol shone with boundless radiance as it immediately exploded, sending formless ripples emanating outward. The ripples enveloped the Li clan, not to destroy it, but to seal it. Once sealed, the Li clan's teleportation portals immediately ceased functioning. The seal was formed by the power of a peak Tao-seeking divine will, and in a twinkling spread out for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. This area was like a world unto itself, cut off from everything else. Unless the Li clan had another peak Tao-seeking expert, even with the aid of special magical items, it would be extremely difficult to break the seal without expending a great deal of time. Furthermore, Meng Hao's second true self now floated cross-legged in midair above the sect, eyes closed in meditation, ignoring the Li clan below entirely. He had been dispatched to the Li clan directly from the Solitary Sword sect, sent by Meng Hao specifically to prevent the Li clan from attempting an escape upon learning what had happened. Although the second true self sat there with eyes closed, his body emanated the pressure of peak Dao seeking. All the Li clan members within the seal trembled in terror, a dread from the depths of the heart that quickly infected the entire clan. "Meng Hao," said the early Dao-seeking Li clan patriarch, who happened to be their 9th patriarch. He flew out from the clan estate, flicking his sleeve to summon a scroll painting. The scroll painting depicted a woman whose eyes were closed in meditation. At first glance she seemed indescribably beautiful and striking, but on closer inspection her features were somewhat indistinct. As soon as she appeared, shocking ripples spread in all directions. The 9th Li clan patriarch performed an incantation gesture, sending the ripples surging through the air in an attack on Meng Hao's second true self. Booms echoed and the air distorted. Meng Hao's second true self slowly opened his eyes to reveal somber coldness. He looked down at the 9th Li clan patriarch, gave a cold snort, and pointed downward. The gesture instantly made the city below quake. Signs of withering appeared in all the cultivators. It almost seemed the natural law of the world inside the sealed area had changed. The face of the 9th Li clan patriarch fell, and he cried out inwardly. Then he bit his tongue and spit out a mouthful of blood, which the scroll painting absorbed. "Ancestor, save me," he cried miserably. As his voice rang out, the scroll burst into flames, and the woman inside opened her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was raspy yet strangely magnetic. "The Li clan is not originally from planet South Heaven, but rather planet North Reed. If you insist on slaughtering these people, fellow Taoist, the Li clan will not rest until you are dead. I won't hold you accountable for your lack of knowledge about the origins of the Li clan. Simply sever your arms as punishment. Furthermore, dig out both your eyes. That is the punishment for anyone not of the Li clan who lays eyes on me. Now, as to whether or not you try to wipe these Li clan members out, the choice is up to you." Chapter 758-1. This chapter actually has no title in the original Chinese. The eyes of Meng Hao's second true self gleamed with killing intent. Although the soul of the second true self was not Meng Hao's, thanks to the hidden power within the fleshly body and Meng Hao's divine will, he could control it as if it were his own body. "Screw off," said the second true self, his voice cold. The words came with no thunderous roar, no boundless ripples, only monstrous coldness spreading in all directions, freezing everything for hundreds of kilometers. Within the flaming painting, the woman's eyes widened. "You really don't know what's good for you," she exclaimed through gritted teeth. She lifted her right hand, summoning a tempest of flame that shot out in all directions to fight against the region set up by the second true self. The second true self snorted, then closed his eyes, ignoring the rumbling that filled the air. He had sealed everything down, making it impossible for the Li clan to flee. Time passed, and the Li clan only grew more panicked. No matter what techniques they tried, they couldn't teleport away, nor break through the seal created by the second true self. Even the face of the woman on the screen began to look unsightly. She was only a strand of divine will, and even at her strongest was still nothing more than a scroll painting, her cultivation base at the mid-Dao seeking level, falling short of the peak. The Li clan of South Heaven was merely one of many offshoot branches of the main Li clan on planet North Reed. If not for their unique ties to the main clan, they would already have died out. As for their previous heights of glory and present decline, in the complex inner workings of the Li clan as a whole, it actually didn't amount to much. 3 days later, rumbling continued to fill the air as it had the entire time. The woman in the scroll painting was more than half burned away, having gone all out with the power available to her as a divine will clone to bolster the Li clan's frantic efforts to break through the seal. As a result, cracks finally became visible in it. It was at this point that tens of thousands of beams of light appeared off in the distance, shooting through the air like a red cloud, radiating killing intent. These were the blood demon sect's tens of thousands of disciples, who had all held themselves back so long. In the lead was Meng Hao, flanked on the left and right by his Dharma protectors. As he neared, the eyes of the woman in the scroll painting glittered. She could tell at a glance that this was the true self of the clone. Her eyes flickered with killing intent, and she was about to say something when coldness burst out of Meng Hao's eyes. Without a word, he waved the index finger of his right hand, and the Golden Frost sect patriarch and the third Li clan patriarch shot toward the Li clan, eyes shining with a glow like blood. At the same time, the tens of thousands of blood demon sect disciples exploded with a blood-colored glow as they finally unleashed the rage pent up this entire time. "Kill them!" Spare no one, kill them all. The tens of thousands of blood demon sect disciples recalled the bitter images from the battle outside their own sect, and their eyes turned red. Bloodthirsty and mad with rage, they charged the Li clan. In response, the Li clan members fought back in desperation, looks of hopelessness on their faces. This was a battle where no quarter would be given. Its sole objective was to wipe out an entire clan. Off in the distance, the hundreds of thousands of rogue cultivators were shaken by what they saw. The killing has started. The blood demon sect's revenge is now truly being carried out. The Li clan will be no more in the southern domain. The Li clan is going to be wiped out, and the Wang clan was mysteriously destroyed in a single night. The only clan left in the southern domain will be the Song clan. Of the 5 great sects, the Black Civ sect was eradicated, and the Solitary Sword sect surrendered and lost their core Taoist teachings and doctrines. It was only because of Li Fugui that the Golden Frost sect maintained theirs, but they will not be able to return to their former glory for many years. That just leaves the Violet Fate sect. Slaughter intensified as the shocked rogue cultivators looked on. The left and right Dharma protectors had lost their conscious wills and attacked with shocking power. The woman in the scroll painting was defeated exchange after exchange, and the 9th Li clan patriarch's face went ashen. Blood sprayed from his mouth as his fleshly body was destroyed by the 3rd Li clan patriarch, his nascent divinity flying out at top speed. "Third patriarch," he shrieked miserably. Unfortunately, the 3rd Li clan patriarch was not aware of what was happening, and his only reaction was to attack again. The Li clan members fought back miserably, but were incapable of standing up to the elite cultivators of the blood demon sect. Thousands were killed in the initial salvo alone. The battlefield was soon soaked with blood, slaughter carrying on constantly. Meng Hao didn't attack, nor did his second true self. They merely observed the battle. By now Meng Hao was growing weary of the bloodshed. In all his years practicing cultivation, he had never killed so many people. Even during the migration in the western desert, he had not seen such endless slaughter. A great weariness filled his heart, and his expression grew somewhat blank. His ears were filled with the din of slaughter, blood-curdling screaming, curses uttered moments before death, and battle cries. Despite the sheer volume of these sounds, all of it seemed to transform into a drone from far away. He suddenly realized he reeked of blood. He could even sense his heart changing color, almost black. It was the result of accumulated murderous desire and too much killing. When his heart became completely black, Meng Hao knew that would probably mean he had reached the point where excessive killing no longer bothered him. But was this what he really wanted? He suddenly missed his days in the demon immortal sect, during the western desert migration, in the southern domain as an alchemist, and even his naive life in the Reliance sect. But now he was surrounded by killing and exhausted from it. When he closed his eyes, he sensed the countless vengeful spirits of those he had killed swirling inside him. They engulfed him, transforming into an intense, resentful miasma like a curse, a never-ending curse. Meng Hao stood there, taciturn and silent. He really was very tired. Perhaps this is why I've been unable to push the blood demon grand magic past the 4th level, he thought with a sigh. I'm still not the devil that Patriarch Blood Demon wishes me to be. I simply can't be that cruel and merciless. I can't kill and kill without being shaken inwardly. After reaching the 4th level of the Blood Demon Grand Magic, he had tried multiple times to achieve enlightenment regarding the 5th level, but to no avail. It was as if he had reached the end of the road. He looked out at the bloody carnage and the twisted expressions of those caught up in the slaughter, and the weariness within him surged even higher. Finally, he had his answer. Perhaps, deep in my heart, I'm simply not willing to let myself become completely black-hearted. I don't want my happiness to come from the ghosts of those I've killed. I don't want my path filled with slaughter. In that case, I guess I'll never reach the 5th level of the Blood Demon Grand Magic in this lifetime. The 5th level requires even more killing. It requires innumerable souls. It requires more and more vengeful spirits gathering around me to successfully cultivate the magic. Only if I concede and become a devil can I fully embrace the blood demon grand magic. At all times, regardless of circumstances, I must embrace the colors of red and black. That is the only way, and it is a way I cannot accept. He stood outside the Li clan looking at rivers of blood, mountains of corpses, and ruins. Booms filled the air as cultivators from both sides fought ferociously as if they had lost all reason. It was at this point that Meng Hao suddenly came to a realization. The battle didn't last long. With the left and right Dharma protectors in action, it barely took 2 hours before the Li clan's fate was sealed. The woman in the scroll painting could not be killed. She was a strand of divine sense that would return to her true self on planet North Reed once the painting vanished. As she began to fade away, her cold voice echoed out. You chose the path of extermination. From now on, if you step foot outside planet South Heaven, the Li clan will hunt you down wherever you go in the Ninth Mountain, for as long as it takes. Meng Hao's eyes flickered with coldness. His second true self waved its right hand toward the woman in the scroll painting, and her fading figure suddenly stopped, the flames burning around her dying down a bit. The woman gaped in shock as Meng Hao pointed his right index finger. Demon Sealing 8th Hex. Demon Sealing 7th Hex. The combination of these two great hexing magics unleashed at once made the woman tremble violently. She was formed from divine will, but suddenly found herself severed from the divine will of her true self. What are you doing? She cried in shock, her face falling. Next, karma enmeshed her, and strands composed of the 5 elements sealed her inside. Meng Hao lifted his hand, and the woman's body shrank gradually. In the blink of an eye, she became a glowing white sphere that floated down to land on his palm. He crushed it. A boom echoed as karma shattered. The woman let out a blood-curdling scream as she was completely destroyed along with her karma. Now she was completely incapable of returning to planet North Reed and her true self. Court death and you just might succeed, said Meng Hao coolly. He opened his hand and countless glowing particles rose into the air. Meng Hao could now sense another vengeful spirit circulating around him. No one else could see the venomous stares. Meng Hao alone could sense them. Meanwhile, on one of the 4 great planets circling the 9th mountain, planet North Reed, there was a continent covering half the entire planet. The entire continent belonged to one clan, the Li clan. According to some legends, this Li clan was founded by descendants of Lord Li of the 9th mountain and sea. Whether that was true was impossible for gossipers to determine. Although, if it were true, why hadn't Lord Jai exterminated this Li clan? In the vast lands of the Li clan was a towering altar of unique design, shaped like an enormous trident. At its very tip, a woman sat cross-legged in meditation. She had very long hair hanging down her body, exceptionally beautiful, almost celestial. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open to reveal a sharp, but confused light. The divine sense clone I left behind for my younger brother's clan on South Heaven just died. Note from Deathblade: the following sneak peek is a NON spoiler. Feel free to discuss it in this chapter's comments. This chapter was sponsored by Thien Enheen Hein, Anton Villet, and MM/expand. The Li clan was destroyed. Not a single clan member was left. All were killed. There was nothing Meng Hao could do to stop it. Nearly 70% of the Blood Demon sect's disciples had died. Though there was a certain coldness among disciples of the sect, this was war, and when fellow disciples passed, the survivors would pay any price to exact vengeance. Vengeance became an obsession. The Solitary Sword sect was the first to surrender, so the Blood Demon sect disciples could choose to endure. Because the Blood Prince's dear friend was a member of the Golden Frost sect, they held on to survival. But when it came to the Li clan, they could endure no more. Perhaps the Blood Demon sect disciples didn't hate the Li clan more than the others, but they needed to kill. They needed revenge. They needed an outlet for their obsession. The Li clan was awash with rivers of blood. What had once been glorious was now in ruins. In the years to come, the clan would eventually turn to nothing more than barren dirt. Many mortals lived in the Li clan's headquarters, but the Blood Demon sect had not sunk to massacring mortals, so they were left alive. Finally, the Blood Demon sect disciples left, returning to the Blood Demon sect, and at long last the slaughter was over in the southern domain. Peace and quiet returned. However, all the southern domain's cultivators knew that from now on, the Blood Demon sect was not just the #1 sect in the southern domain, it was the ruler. No power could resist them. The Blood Demon sect now had 4 peak Tao-seeking cultivators. Patriarch Blood Demon, Patriarch Golden Frost, the 3rd Li clan patriarch and the 4th member Meng Hao's clone. With 4 peak Tao-seeking experts, the Blood Demon sect had the power to sweep unhindered across the southern domain, comparable even to some of the true super sects of the eastern lands. Furthermore, the power they had displayed recently was just the tip of the iceberg. After the destruction of the Li clan, the southern domain was once again stable and quiet. Unfortunately, the overall number of cultivators in the land had been significantly reduced. Some areas were even noticeably empty. Meng Hao didn't immediately return to the Blood Demon sect. First he went to the Violet Fate sect, which sent the entire sect into a stir. When he arrived outside the main gate, he looked up silently at the enormous statue of Reverend Violet East. The Violet Fate sect was silent for a short while. Then the East Pill division and the Violet Chi division appeared in solemn, ceremonial form. Meng Hao saw many familiar faces and sighed. His desire had not been to reunite with the Violet Fate sect in such a way. This kind of meeting made him feel like a stranger. The elderly Violet Fate sect leader strode forward, an old man very familiar to Meng Hao. He looked nervous as he clasped hands and said, "Blood Prince, your gracious presence is a bright light shining down upon our humble sect. Please come in." Violet Chi division and the East Pill division made similar welcoming declarations. Among their number was the sect elder from years ago who had identified Meng Hao's incredible latent talent. He saw Violet Furnace Lords Lin Heilong and Zehai, as well as the man he had become entangled with back in the state of Zhao, Wu Dinkyu. 1. Wu Dinkyu was the one who made the bet with eccentric Song in Chapter 48 and was involved in the incident with the spear. He last appeared in Chapter 717, when Meng Hao went to the ancient Dao Lakes. All of them approached Meng Hao and clasped hands in respect. Hang Sushan made an appearance, but not Chu Yuyan. The respect shown by the Violet Fate sect made Meng Hao sigh inwardly. He wanted to ask them not to treat him this way, but couldn't change the murderous air swirling around him. The events at the Black Civ sect, the Solitary Sword sect, the Golden Frost sect, and the Li clan had struck fear into the entire southern domain, becoming a palpable pressure radiating out from Meng Hao. He could tell Wu Dinkyu was nervous, and sensed the fear in the hearts of Zehai and the other Violet Furnace Lords. Even Hang Sushan seemed reluctant to approach him. Other familiar faces showed the same reaction. His murderous aura was too strong, like a stabbing needle keeping people from getting close. Meng Hao stood there, silent, his heart twinging painfully. After someone gets too powerful, he thought, must he grow apart from the people he used to know? Meng Hao suddenly felt very lonely, the isolated feeling of being with friends, yet suddenly realizing you feel alone in the vast world. Meng Hao thought of Chen Fan and Fatty. For some reason he even thought of Grand Elder Aoyang from the Reliance sect and sect leader He Luohua. Throughout the hundreds of years, Meng Hao had never run into them. 2. Grand Elder Aoyang and He Luohua last appeared in Chapter 43, although they were mentioned a couple times throughout the story when Meng Hao thought back to the state of Zhao. Feeling both like a friend and a stranger, Meng Hao entered the Violet Fate sect. Normally, the peak Dao-seeking patriarch of the Violet Fate sect never appeared in public, but with Meng Hao's arrival, he emerged from secluded meditation. He was a middle-aged man with an ancient, transcendent air, skinny, with no brilliant glow in his eyes, but his peak Dao-seeking aura was far from weak. He peered out from within the temple, watching Meng Hao approach with Violet Fate cultivators crowding around him. "Fellow Taoist Meng, please have a seat." With a slight smile, the man waved his hand, and a long table appeared in the center of the temple's main hall. Alcohol and spirit fruits sat on the table, and off to the side floating figures played beautiful music. The rest of the Violet Fate sect members stopped outside the temple hall. They clasped hands and bowed deeply, then slowly left. Soon only Meng Hao and the middle-aged man remained. "Patriarch, there's really no need for all this," said Meng Hao. "You're a guest, fellow Taoist," the man said with a smile. "Even though you used to be a disciple of the Violet Fate sect, now that you've come in this fashion, how could I not entertain you? Please have a seat." Meng Hao stepped forward and sat down at the table. With a smile, the middle-aged man sat down across from him. "I am Sun Tao, and to be honest, I'm not a patriarch. I'm simply an apprentice alchemist, so there's no need to address me as patriarch. Actually, to be most correct, I should call you young lord." The man laughed and poured Meng Hao a cup of alcohol. Meng Hao stared at him in shock. "In the past, I was apprentice alchemist to Reverend Violet East." Sun Tao looked at Meng Hao for a moment, then smiled. "In fact, I still am." At this point, Meng Hao's eyes glittered. "It is neither necessary nor proper for you to ask the question on your mind," continued Sun Tao. "I know exactly why you've come here. Unfortunately, your master is in secluded meditation and cannot come out." Meng Hao's heart trembled. He had come to the Violet Fate sect to see his master. They had been separated for many years, but he had never forgotten the three kowtows. "Your master sent me here to explain something to you," Sun Tao went on. "When practicing cultivation, one must cultivate the heart." As long as the heart is there, it doesn't matter if it's red or black. Your will is the most important factor. Your will is like a blade, and that blade can still be used in your third severing. There's no need to be swept up in confusion. Life is a series of decisions. Whether you make the correct decisions or not doesn't matter. The important thing is to keep moving forward. Years later, when you look back, perhaps you'll find the incorrect decisions you made weren't really incorrect. Similarly, the correct decisions might not have been correct. Why struggle with frustration? Why proceed with confusion? In all things, resolution only comes from continuing to move forward. Following this line of reasoning, if there is no such thing as incorrect, then how can the correct exist? Similarly, if there is no correct, then how can the incorrect exist? Another matter, said Sun Tao, gazing at Meng Hao. The Tao of alchemy is a great Tao. Your master wished me to remind you never to abandon it. Although it might not be of much use to your cultivation here in the lands of South Heaven, your future path will take you far from here. At that time, the Tao of alchemy will be of incredible help. It will ensure that no matter what hardships you face, your alchemic flame will never be extinguished. Meng Hao sat there silently. After a long moment, he lifted his glass and took a long drink, then stood, clasped hands, and bowed deeply to Sun Tao. Many thanks for the enlightenment, Senior, he said. Please pass word to my master that I will never forget his teachings. Sun Tao remained seated, but gave a slight nod. Meng Hao took a deep breath and turned to leave the temple hall. At the same time, in an immortal's cave on the #1 mountain peak of the East Pill Division, a white-haired old man sat cross-legged in meditation, the air around him twisting and distorting as if from a great Tao. His eyes opened a crack as he watched Meng Hao leaving the main temple, an expression of contentment on his face. As soon as Meng Hao emerged from the temple hall, the Violet Fate sect leader, elders, and others hurried forward. At the same time, Meng Hao suddenly stopped and turned his head to look toward the mountains of the East Pill Division. After a long moment, he looked back at the sect leader. I'd like to visit my old immortal's cave, he said. The sect leader immediately nodded, and the group escorted him to the East Pill Division. Almost as soon as he entered the East Pill Division, a strange expression appeared on Meng Hao's face. He had just caught sight of an iron spear. After all these years, the spear was still here in the Violet Fate sect. It was stabbed into the ground, surrounded by an ornate barricade. The spear had become a landmark in the Violet Fate sect. Seated cross-legged by the spear were two old men. Despite their age, Meng Hao still recognized them, Lu Song and Qian Shuhin. 3. Lu Song and Qian Shuhin were the disciples who got sucked into Meng Hao's spear scam in Chapter 55. Both of them made appearances later on at the Song clan, and also during Meng Hao's time in the Violet Fate sect. By now, both were core formation cultivators and honor guards of the Violet Fate sect. The moment Meng Hao laid eyes on them, they rose to their feet, expressions of deep respect on their faces, and clasped hands and bowed deeply to Meng Hao. Greetings, Senior Meng. The Violet Fate sect leader laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, Blood Prince, do you still remember this spear? It was originally brought back to the sect by Wu Dinkyu. This area is now a famous place in the sect. Senior Meng, you can rest your heart at ease, said Lu Song excitedly. Yes, Senior, we will definitely care well for the spear, agreed Qian Shuhin. Lu Song and Qian Shuhin had long since forgotten their resentment from years ago. Now they viewed Meng Hao with almost feverish adoration. In fact, everything that had happened between them and Meng Hao years ago was now a source of pride for both. Meng Hao cleared his throat and rubbed his bag of holding. Only he knew that inside was a gold spear he still hadn't found a chance to con someone with. 4. I think many of you still remember the gold spear that Meng Hao had made in Chapter 46. It was part of a set of 3, one being iron, another silver, and the third gold. Off to the side, Wu Dinkyu shuddered. Grumbling inwardly, he was about to edge backward when Meng Hao looked over at him. A tremor ran through Wu Dinkyu, and he immediately plastered a smile onto his face. His heart pounded, and he could not stop cursing eccentric Song for instigating the spear incident. Even as Meng Hao was in the Violet Fate sect reminiscing about old times, a desolate and frightening scene was playing out on the border of the northern reaches, near the Milky Way Sea. Nearly 1,000,000 cultivators stood at combat readiness near the shore, divided into more than 10 battalions according to the various sects and tribes they came from. There were also numerous 300-meter-tall beasts, shackled so tightly with iron chains that they couldn't free themselves no matter how fiercely they struggled. Up in the sky, Countless vicious flying beasts emitted piercing cries as they circled, their wings casting enormous shadows that nearly blotted out the entire sky. Further off were dozens of roaring giants as tall as mountains, wielding bone cudgels. Even further off were dark clouds circulating about, apparently concealing countless savage and evil spirits. This was the army of the northern reaches, gathered next to the Milky Way Sea. Apparently they were waiting for something. Most shocking of all were the 11 unbridled and lofty auras roaring high into the sky. These auras were all peaked Tao-seeking auras. From Deathblade, for those of you who don't read the chapter releases, I recently changed my translation schedule. My translation week now starts on Saturday and ends on Friday. Because I instituted this arrangement on Sunday, this week technically only has 6 days in it. Despite that, I will stick to the usual 7 per week guaranteed free chapters arrangement, although the maximum sponsored chapters will be 7, 2 less than normal. As such, this is how the current week stacks up. 5 7 guaranteed chapters and 3 sponsored chapters, for a total of 8 chapters so far. Therefore, between now and Friday, there will be a minimum of 2 chapters and a maximum of 9. If you're digging the story, please consider making a donation toward a sponsored chapter, if that's appropriate for your current situation in life. Patreon sponsors, your donations on Patreon will be processed starting on June 1 and will be added to the queue sometime in the next week or so. /expand. Storm clouds were gathering. Up above the Violet Fate sect, dark clouds formed in thick layers. Flashes of lightning could be seen, accompanied by the rumble of thunder. The rain would soon begin to pour down. When it came to weather like this, with rain or snow, most sects would do nothing to shield the sect from the elements. Instead, they would let the rain and snow fall onto the sect itself. They believed rain and snow were part of the Tao of living things, and that by experiencing such weather, the spiritual energy in the sect would thrive. By preventing the rain and snow from entering the sect might have the appearance of an immortal paradise, but, in fact, it would lose some of its connection with nature. Meng Hao glanced once more at the iron spear, then cleared his throat and spoke a few polite words. Then he headed further into the East Pill division, toward the small mountain that had once been his home. Throughout all the years that had passed, no one had ever been allowed to occupy the mountain. It was as if the mountain had been reserved for him for all eternity. From this detail, he could tell that, as far as his master pill demon was concerned, Meng Hao would always be a disciple of the Violet Fate sect. When Meng Hao entered his old immortal's cave, the Violet Fate sect leader, elders, and others could all see the reminiscence in his eyes and discreetly took their leave. Meng Hao was left alone in his old residence. Before long, the thunder overhead grew louder, and the rain pattered onto the ground as it began to fall in earnest. A fine mist was kicked up, but it didn't rise far before being beaten back down by the oncoming rain. Small rivulets of water could soon be seen. Everything grew hazy as the sheets of rain descended. The entire scene was one of charm and peacefulness. Meng Hao stood at the door of his immortal's cave, looking out at the rain, thinking about his days as an alchemist. Time passed. The sky grew dark and the rain fell harder and harder. Meng Hao stood there for a long time expecting a certain someone to appear. However, by the time the glow of dawn appeared in the sky, she hadn't. Meng Hao smiled and shook his head silently. As the sun rose, the rain ceased. The sky was clear, and the moisture left behind by the rain made the air thrum with exuberant life force. Meng Hao walked out of his immortal's cave and prepared to leave the Violet Fate sect. On his way out, he visited Bai Yunlai and gave him a hefty sum of spirit stones and medicinal pills. He also went to see Xianxia Shan and some of his other old acquaintances. He gave gifts to all of them, even Chu Yuyan. After a moment of silent consideration, he left her a jade slip with a strand of his divine sense, which would protect her in a moment of deadly crisis. He gave the jade slip to Xianxia Shan and asked her to pass it along to Chu Yuyan. With that, he flew into midair, then transformed into a beam of colorful light that shot into the distance. In the moment that he left, Chu Yuyan sat in her immortal's cave in the East Pill division, gnawing on her lip as she looked up into the sky. "You made your choice and I have my pride," she murmured softly. Eventually, Xianxia Shan came. She hesitated for a moment before offering the jade slip to Chu Yuyan. Chu Yuyan was silent for a moment. At first, she didn't want to accept the gift, but in the end, she couldn't control herself. She lifted her hand up and took the jade slip. Xianxia Shan gave a slight sigh and then left. Chu Yuyan trembled as she held the jade slip in her hand. It was hard to say when, but at some point, tears began to roll down her cheeks. Meng Hao left the Violet Fate sect and flew through the boundless sky over the familiar lands of the southern domain toward the Song clan. The Song clan was in the south, in a special area that did not suppress the cultivation base of cultivators, but made it impossible for them to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Years ago, Meng Hao had no way to understand why the Song clan was like that. However, given the current level of his cultivation base, he now knew it was a feature created by a peak Dao-seeking expert. Dao-seeking cultivators could form their own personal natural laws, which grew more and more powerful as they approached the peak of Dao-seeking. Eventually, such natural law could create special regions, just like the Song clan. When Meng Hao entered the territory of the Song clan, the entire clan was thrown into a commotion. The Song clan patriarch, who had been in secluded meditation under the surface of the clan, opened his eyes and went out to meet Meng Hao. The clan would not allow the slightest disrespect to be shown to Meng Hao. In fact, there was not a single cultivator in the entire southern domain who would treat Meng Hao disrespectfully now. Perhaps Meng Hao himself was not incredibly strong, but his second true self was a peak Dao-seeking cultivator, and Meng Hao was the blood prince of the blood demon sect. The entire Song clan arranged a grand banquet to honor Meng Hao, the scale of which was unprecedented. As he sat there, Meng Hao looked around at the Song clan and mused that this was his second time visiting this place. The first time was for the Song clan's search for a son-in-law. That was when he had acquired good fortune and met Shui Dongliu. The Song clan patriarch sat next to Meng Hao and couldn't help but sigh emotionally. Even more emotional than the patriarch, however, was eccentric Song. He was still a nascent soul cultivator, and he sat in a position not too far away from Meng Hao, his head bowed, fearful that Meng Hao would look his way. Despite his bowed head, Meng Hao still noticed him. "Fellow Taoist Song," he said coolly, "how are all those wild beasts that you collect?" After all, Meng Hao had never viewed himself as the type of person to hold a grudge. Eccentric Song shivered, thinking back to what he had witnessed Meng Hao do at the ancient Dao lakes. After it was all over, eccentric Song had assumed everything was water under the bridge, but now that Meng Hao was actually in the Song clan, he was more nervous than ever. As soon as Meng Hao asked his question, eccentric Song lurched to his feet and clasped his hands toward Meng Hao, bowing repeatedly. His face was covered with a flattering smile that was even more unbearable to look at than if he had begun to cry. "Senior, I am honored by your concern. However, I don't collect wild beasts anymore." "Oh," replied Meng Hao. As he gazed at eccentric Song, he noticed the pleading look in the man's eyes. Meng Hao smiled slightly and then looked away. Eccentric Song heaved a sigh of relief and quickly sat down, whereupon he picked up his glass and took a long drink of alcohol. Although his fear had been allayed, moments ago he had been frightened to death. He had long since heard stories of Meng Hao's shocking, murderous air. Meng Hao could kill without blinking. He had exterminated Dao-seeking experts, and slaughtering spirit-severing cultivators was as easy to him as killing dogs. As for nascent soul cultivators, he could blot them out of existence simply by breathing. Meng Hao's presence and the fact that he was sitting next to the Song clan patriarch left eccentric Song terrified. Ever since Meng Hao returned to the southern domain, eccentric Song had begun to regret his past actions. Then the blood demon sect rose to prominence, and his fear grew. "I absolutely, positively, without a shadow of a doubt should not have provoked that jinx all those years ago. Who would have ever guessed that the brat would eventually become so terrifying? Nobody could have predicted it." Sighing, eccentric Song thought back to the events in the state of Zhao, and how Meng Hao had slaughtered a path all the way to the top of the mountain with the iron spear. Eccentric Song almost seemed to be in a trance, as he remembered all the spirit stones and medicinal pills that were taken away. Although, he thought, how many people in the southern domain can say they caused that jinx Meng Hao to flee from them? I guess this just goes to show how great I am. Now that he thought about it, eccentric Song felt a bit pleased with himself. Besides, it was that old bastard Wu Dinkyu who instigated the whole incident. There was another person at the banquet who sighed emotionally, and that was Song Jia's mother. As for Song Jia, she sat next to her mother, her expression indifferent. Her mother was the one with the excited expression. According to what that woman said all those years ago, she thought, Jair can become Meng Hao's maidservant. Not bad, actually. How do I bring it up to him, though? She frowned and then looked over at the Song clan patriarch, only to find that he was looking at her. 1. The incident with that woman occurred in chapter 190. She immediately understood what he was thinking and abandoned her previous plan. The banquet lasted a few hours. Meng Hao's primary objective in coming to the Song clan was to reassure and pacify them. After all, the Blood Demon sect was now the greatest power in the unified southern domain. The Song clan had maintained neutrality, so it was necessary for the Blood Demon sect's Blood Prince to personally visit them. There was no need for formal agreements. Meng Hao's visit was enough to explain the stance of the Blood Demon sect. Similarly, for the Song clan patriarch to personally entertain him showed the Song clan's attitude. As evening fell, Meng Hao politely refused the Song clan's urgings that he stay behind for longer. When he rose to leave, his gaze fell upon Song Jia, and he hesitated for a moment before producing a jade slip. The jade slip contained a strand of divine sense similar to the one he had given Chu Yuyan. Meng Hao knew he was beholden to Song Jia. His youthful hot-headedness had influenced her search for a husband, and was the reason she had never married. Meng Hao had always felt he owed an apology for the matter. Considering that he had personally gifted her with the jade slip, and also helped her in the ancient demon immortal sect, he finally felt as if there was some resolution to the matter. Song Jia accepted the jade slip and bowed her head in thanks, her expression as calm as ever. Off to the side, the Song clan patriarch smiled as he looked on, and his eyes glittered. Finally, he laughed heartily and then escorted Meng Hao out of the Song clan ancestral mansion. "Patriarch, there's no need to see me out," said Meng Hao. "If I have some free time in the future, I'll come back to visit." He clasped hands, then made to leave. "Meng Hao, my young friend," said the patriarch with a laugh, "there's no need for such formality. Actually, we're already like family, right? My little granddaughter Song Jia has long since become your maidservant, so there's no need for you to treat the Song clan as if we're strangers." "Maidservant," said Meng Hao, stopping in his tracks. He looked back at the patriarch with a strange expression. "Oh, you didn't know, young friend." The Song clan patriarch could tell the truth from Meng Hao's expression, but he feigned astonishment nonetheless. "Back during the Song clan search for a son-in-law, your mother came personally to ask us to make my little granddaughter your maidservant." Meng Hao's heart began to pound with great waves of shock. However, after practicing cultivation for so many years, he was not the novice he had been years ago, and his expression stayed the same as ever. Still, a profound gleam appeared deep in his eyes as he looked back at Patriarch Song. "Patriarch, there's no need to beat around the bush," said Meng Hao. Considering Meng Hao's countenance, Patriarch Song's expression became solemn. "Well, I'm not entirely sure if it was your mother, young friend. After the incident occurred, I realized that there are two possibilities. Either it really was your mother, or it was the mother of the resurrection lily. I have no way to determine for certain, but what I can tell you is that she is an immortal. As to whether she is a false immortal or true immortal, I don't know. However, she definitely came from the eastern lands." Patriarch Song slapped his bag of holding to produce a jade slip, which he handed to Meng Hao. "This is her likeness, which I inscribed onto this jade slip from my memory." Meng Hao silently accepted the jade slip. He almost didn't dare look at it. Taking a deep breath, he sent his divine sense inside, whereupon he saw the image of a woman. Instantly, towering waves of shock filled him. Even if his composure were stronger, it would still have shattered. He suddenly felt as if 100,000 thunderclaps were exploding in his ears. His body trembled, and his eyes shone with intense attachment and obsession. He had long since stopped trying to track down information about his parents. He had long since assumed that his childhood dream of traveling to the eastern lands was something of the past. But now he had an intense impulse to immediately go to the eastern lands to ask, why? That was because the woman in the jade slip looked exactly like the image of his mother that existed in his memories. This chapter was sponsored by Susanto Ali Budeman, Fabian Mueller, and Joshua Evans. Chapter 761, An Old Friend. Meng Hao's hand slowly tightened around the jade slip. Although he kept his thoughts concealed deep in his heart and would not easily reveal them, Patriarch Song had practiced cultivation for many years and was able to pick up on some clues from the motion of Meng Hao's hand. He knew his gamble had paid off. Meng Hao took a deep breath, then clasped hands and bowed deeply to Patriarch Song. "Many thanks," he said. He said nothing more than those two words, but to Patriarch Song, that was enough. He nodded and clasped hands in return. "Meng Hao, my young friend, if you ever go to the eastern lands, the Song clan's branch there may be able to provide you with some assistance." Meng Hao nodded, then, without another word, transformed into a beam of light that shot off into the distance. Patriarch Song watched him fly off. After a long moment, when Meng Hao was no longer visible, he turned and headed back into the Song clan ancestral mansion. As Meng Hao flew through the air, a complex expression could be seen on his face. Images from his childhood appeared in his mind, which hadn't faded after the passing of years, but were clearer than ever. Mom, Dad, just why? Why did you have to leave? Why did you leave me behind? Why? Why would you come to the Song clan and not tell me? You were obviously there. Why? Meng Hao felt as if his heart was being stabbed with a knife. These questions had been buried in his heart far too long, with no answers. The answers were in the eastern lands. Finally, Meng Hao sighed and regained his composure. He was a powerful expert who had practiced cultivation for hundreds of years. The only thing that could make him lose control was the matter of his father and mother. The eastern lands, he thought. It was always my dream to go there. That is where I must go. Decisiveness appeared in his eyes. He took a deep breath and then sped onward. As evening deepened, he shot forward at top speed. He had called on the Song clan and visited the Violet Fate sect. Now it was time to return to the Blood Demon sect and spend the rest of the 100 years with Su Qing. Even as he continued along, his gaze was suddenly drawn to something that was happening off in the distance. So it's him, he thought, surprised. He was currently in the border region between the Song clan and the Blood Demon sect. 50 kilometers or so from his position, 3 streaks of light sped through the air. Clearly, there were 2 cultivators chasing a third cultivator. The target was a middle-aged man who wore a blood-stained white robe. From the look on his face, he had experienced many things. He seemed exhausted and even more so, full of grief. It was easy to see that once upon a time he had been incredibly handsome. Now he looked old but still carried himself with an extraordinary, heroic spirit. However, the years had not been kind to him, and he had undergone a baptism of ruthlessness. Now his life was one of pain. Wang Tengfei, where do you think you can run to now? You used to be a top chosen of the Wang clan, but now you're nothing more than a stray dog. All you know how to do is run away. What are you running for? Come on, show us some of your skills from all those years ago. You used to be the pinnacle of arrogance. You chased me and my brother for years trying to kill us. Now we finally get to meet again and you're running away. Ha ha ha, of course he's running. There's no Wang clan in the southern domain anymore. It was wiped out in a single night. Wang Tengfei just got lucky and escaped death. Unfortunately for him, he ran into us here. Wang Tengfei, you're dead. The person being chased was none other than Wang Tengfei. The pursuers were 2 middle-aged cultivators with late core formation cultivation bases, only half a step from the nascent soul stage. As for Wang Tengfei, he too was in the late core formation stage. However, he was clearly wounded and could do nothing more than flee from his 2 opponents. His face was ashen and filled with intense grief. The words spoken by his pursuers stabbed deep into his heart. After the Wang clan was destroyed, he had experienced far too many slanderous insults. He had once been chosen, but in the blink of an eye had turned into an outcast. He had told himself he could get used to this new situation, but every time he heard words like those being hurled at him now, they hurt deeply. It felt as if people were digging his heart out of his chest, and it made the pained expression on his face grow even more intense. He had been there the night the Wang clan was wiped out. He had personally witnessed the patriarch's insanity as he slaughtered one clan member after another. That night, it felt as if the sky had fallen. His father and mother died, his grandfather died, everyone died one by one. As for himself, he had been consumed by terror and sorrow, and then his older brother, the older brother who he had always wanted to surpass, struck him on the head with a palm. That palm swept through him like thunder, rendering him unconscious. The last thing he remembered was his brother murmuring in his ear, "Hey kid, stay alive." When Wang Tengfei woke up, he opened his eyes to find himself in a sea of blood. He was surrounded by the corpses of his fellow clan members. Laying directly on top of him was the body of his older brother. His brother had covered him with his own corpse, using the aura of death to hide Wang Tengfei. That was how Wang Tengfei managed to escape the disaster caused by the 10th Wang clan patriarch, who in his demented state had not bothered to search very carefully. 1. Although he is not mentioned by name, Wang Tengfei's brother was Wang Lihai, a recurring character who appeared in the Blood Immortal Legacy Tournament arc, the Dao Geyser arc, and the Demon Immortal Sect arc, and perhaps some other places that are currently skipping my mind. At that point, Wang Tengfei began to weep. He had nothing, no clan, no family, everything was gone. He felt like the only person alive in the entire world. Bitterly, he crawled to his feet and began to wander. He was alive, but it was as if he had already died. People who had once been his friends now looked at him with cold mockery. The constant ridicule was a vast difference from how he had been treated in the past, and it caused the trembling Wang Tengfei to come to a realization. All he could do was bow his head and bitterly accept the ridicule. He wanted to find the 10th Wang clan patriarch and ask him, "Why? Why did you eradicate the entire Wang clan, sir? Why?" It became the only reason for Wang Tengfei to continue living. He began to search the entire southern domain, using his bloodline connection to try to find the 10th Wang clan patriarch. Even if he died in the process, he would get his answer. It was finally in this area that he sensed the presence of the 10th patriarch. He had started a thorough search, but before he could track him down, ran into these two people whom he had previously disdained as unworthy of even a glance. They were nobodies whom he and his subordinates had hunted down and tried to kill over some magical item. Now he could only flee from them. Wang Tengfei's two pursuers performed incantation gestures, causing two flying swords to speed out. Glittering, they shot toward the ashen-faced Wang Tengfei, who quickly produced a small drum and tossed it behind him. It rapidly expanded and reverberated with a pounding sound as the two swords neared it. The items collided and boom! As the explosion reverberated out, Wang Tengfei spit out blood. His face went pale white as he braced himself and pushed forward at top speed. He didn't take time to retrieve the drum. The two pursuing cultivators laughed as one of them took it. Then they shot forward in pursuit again, their eyes shining with greed and killing intent. They continued to fight back and forth, and Wang Tengfei continuously coughed up blood. The sword glow beneath his feet began to fade, and a look of despair filled his eyes. To him, the whole world seemed to have turned gray. "You used to be so arrogant, didn't you? Back then you were so high and mighty. You looked down on everyone else as if they were bugs, and you were the chosen of heaven. Where is your arrogance now, huh? Wang Tengfei, you're dead. If you get reincarnated, then remember not to be so arrogant in your next life." The two pursuers' eyes flashed with killing intent, and they attacked simultaneously, unleashing their most powerful divine abilities. Sword chi swirled, and a massive palm rumbled out toward Wang Tengfei. Wang Tengfei smiled bitterly. He knew he couldn't escape, so he turned in place and started to laugh. He had had enough of life and should have died with the rest of his clan anyway. He was just about to throw caution to the wind when suddenly a sigh could be heard echoing throughout the land. Once they heard the sigh, Wang Tengfei's two pursuers stopped, and their faces went pale. They instantly began to tremble as they looked behind Wang Tengfei. Blood demon sect, the Blood Prince. It's Meng Hao. Meng Hao floated down from behind Wang Tengfei until he stood between him and the two pursuers. "This person is an old friend of mine," he said. "Fellow Taoists, would you mind giving me a bit of face?" The two pursuers gasped, and their hearts filled with terror. They immediately clasped hands and bowed with the utmost respect. "Senior, we didn't know that Wang Tengfei was an old friend of the Blood Prince. Please don't be offended, Your Excellency. We'll be leaving now." The two cultivators were thoroughly shaken. No one in the southern domain was unfamiliar with Meng Hao's face. They didn't care a whit about Wang Tengfei, but as for Meng Hao, he was terrifying to the extreme. Even as they spoke, the two men backed up, trembling. Wang Tengfei gaped at Meng Hao's back, then saw the expressions on the faces of the two men and felt stabs of pain in his heart. Such expressions used to fill the faces of people who looked at him, the kind of expressions he savored before the Wang clan was eradicated. But now, Wang Tengfei's face distorted. He felt as if a blade was stabbing through his heart as he glared angrily at Meng Hao. His hatred for Meng Hao ran deep, and even before the destruction of the Wang clan, he had dreamed of personally slaying him. He hated Meng Hao for taking his legacy. He hated Meng Hao for taking his fiancée. He hated Meng Hao for all his success. In Wang Tengfei's mind, everything Meng Hao had achieved should have been his. In recent days, whenever he heard stories of Meng Hao, he felt like his heart was being crushed. He almost felt as if he would go insane. His hatred ran all the way to his marrow. "I don't need your help," he cried out. "Kill me, all right, just kill me, kill me. I'm done with living, Meng Hao. You want to kill me? Fine, you don't have to pretend, come on. Wang Tengfei's spirit is indomitable. I'm standing right here. Come on, kill me. You took away all my good fortune. You took away all my opportunities. You even took away my fiancée. I will not live under the same sky as you, you charlatan, you lowlife. Come on, kill me. You were nothing back in the Reliance sect. I could have killed you with the wave of a finger. If Grand Elder Aoyang hadn't interfered, I would have cut you down. I am chosen of the Reliance sect, chosen of the Wang clan, and you're an insect. Wang Tengfei started to laugh maniacally. He had repressed himself for too long, and now he hysterically shouted out all his grievances. Expand. Wang Tengfei's hysterical screaming did nothing more than make Meng Hao frown slightly. However, the other two cultivators' faces went deathly pale, and their hearts began to pound with fear. They suddenly recalled an event that had caused a minor stir in the southern domain, the matter of the love triangle involving Meng Hao, Wang Tengfei, and Chu Yuyan. Not good, these two used to be rivals in love. Damn it, we happened to run into both of these guys and heard some things we weren't supposed to. The two cultivators' faces fell, and they backed up nervously. Seeing that Meng Hao wasn't paying attention to them, they fled at top speed, cursing the fact that they couldn't sprout wings. Come on, kill me, raged Wang Tengfei, his eyes bloodshot. He even began to approach Meng Hao until he was right in front of him. Didn't you want to kill me back in the Reliance sect, Meng Hao? I remember your fingernails sticking into the flesh of your palms and the blood dripping down. Back then you were an ant, and I was chosen. 1. When Wang Tengfei almost killed Meng Hao in Chapter 18, Meng Hao's fists clenched so hard that his fingernails dug into his palms and then broke off. Now look at me, I bet you're happy, aren't you? Very happy, right? Come on, kill me. I've lived enough already. My clan is gone, my clan members are gone, my family is gone. My older brother gave his life for me, but what's the point? At least dying at your hand will release me from my worldly cares. Why haven't you made a move yet? Kill me. A complicated expression could be seen on Meng Hao's face as he looked back at Wang Tengfei. He had long since learned what had happened to the Wang clan. As for everything from the past, it was nothing more than that, the past. I'm a Wang clan chosen. When I was a child, a drop of blood from a flying rain dragon fell from the skies. I followed my instincts and intuition, and after paying a huge price, finally found the Reliance sect. The flying rain dragon legacy belongs to me, but you took it away. You took away my legacy, and you took away my inner sect qualifications in the Reliance sect too. You destroyed any chance I had of getting the sublime spirit scripture. Then you even took my fiancée away from me. Chu Yuyan was my fiancée, but she dissolved our engagement, all because of you. Do I owe you a debt from my previous life or something, Meng Hao? Why, over and over again you took away everything. As Wang Tengfei screamed and yelled, tears began to stream down his face. Now you have everything that belongs to me. I should be the #1 person in the southern domain. I should be on top. And you should be like I am now. Everything you have was taken from me, and now here you stand in front of me, the winner again. You're gonna save me. You're not saving me. I don't need your pity or compassion, I just need you to kill me. Don't give me that look, Meng Hao, he said, tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm Wang Tengfei. After the destruction of the Wang clan, Wang Tengfei had been the subject of endless ridicule. It was a pain he could handle. There was only one thing in the world he couldn't abide, a single person. Meng Hao. He would rather die than see pity and perplexity in Meng Hao's eyes. He was Wang Tengfei. If he had to die, fine, but he would die with pride. Meng Hao sighed and shook his head. When he recalled everything that had happened between him and Wang Tengfei, he knew he had acted a bit impulsively. He had been young and hot-headed, and now that he looked back, he realized that many of the things he had done were a bit excessive. For example, the matter with Chu Yuyan. Perhaps, if he hadn't deliberately sabotaged Wang Tengfei and Chu Yuyan, the two of them would still be together today, happy and content. At least they would be better off than they were now. Meng Hao didn't say anything. He produced a jade slip and imprinted it with some divine sense, then tossed it over to float in front of Wang Tengfei. Take this, he said softly. If you get into grave danger, it can save your life a single time. You and I are old friends. I truly hope that you can find your way. With that, he turned to leave. Wang Tengfei stared in shock at the jade slip hovering in front of him. Then he lifted his head and began to laugh madly as more tears poured down his face. He didn't want goodwill from Meng Hao. He didn't want to be weak in front of the person he had once hated more than anyone in the world. After the destruction of the Wang clan, he had experienced many things and had come to know the hypocrisy of the world. Former good friends kicked him when he was down. Past companions avoided him as if he were poisonous vermin. Such pain was something he could accept. If past enemies tried to kill him, at least he could self-detonate and end in common ruin with them. How could he ever have imagined that the person he hated the most would be the only person to treat him kindly after his fall from the top? He didn't want to accept it and could not accept it. His hysteria was a way to vent, his tears an expression of sorrow. He waved his hand, sending the jade slip clattering to the ground. "I'm Wang Tengfei, I don't need your sympathy." Meng Hao stopped and looked back, then sighed again. He was just about to leave when suddenly, he heard a long cry coming from within the nearby forest. The cry caused colors to flash through the sky and sent the clouds churning. A figure emerged from the trees who emanated an aura that exceeded the peak of Tao seeking. "Ha ha ha, immortal ascension, immortal ascension. Ha ha ha, I will become immortal." It was a deranged old man with unkempt hair, tattered clothing, and filthy skin. Meng Hao's pupils constricted, and killing intent flickered in his eyes. His second true self suddenly materialized next to him and took a step forward. The deranged old man looked very different from before, but Meng Hao could still tell he was the 10th Wang clan patriarch. Meng Hao had previously made inquiries about the 10th Wang clan patriarch. He knew that the patriarch in his madness had destroyed the Wang clan, then gone completely insane. However, this was the first time he had personally encountered him in the southern domain. "Patriarch," cried Wang Tengfei. "10th Wang clan patriarch," growled Meng Hao grimly. He raised his hand and pointed a finger, causing his second true self to shoot through the air toward the 10th Wang clan patriarch. Rumbling explosions filled the air as the two instantly began a fight. As for the 10th Wang clan patriarch, immortal qi swirled around him. His hair was completely disheveled, and his aged face was filled with a confused expression. "Immortal ascension. I will become immortal." Laughing foolishly, he waved his hand, causing the air to distort. Powerful cultivation base ripples spread out as he battled with Meng Hao's second true self. Meng Hao gave a cold snort and flew out. He had a Tao-seeking fleshly body and the lightning cauldron, which he produced as he closed in on the 10th Wang clan patriarch. Booms echoed out as Meng Hao and his second true self fought back and forth with the 10th Wang clan patriarch. The wind screamed and the land quaked. "Sever!" Meng Hao's second true self cried out and sent the wooden time sword slashing out. Tens of thousands of years of time power swept out like a great river. However, the 10th Wang clan patriarch was no ordinary peak Tao-seeking cultivator. He had immortal qi and an immortal aura which he sent out to resist the time power. A boom echoed out, and the second true self fell back. The 10th Wang clan patriarch's face went pale, and the confusion in his eyes began to be replaced with clarity. "Meng Hao," he said, staring fixedly at Meng Hao. His voice was hoarse, and he spoke haltingly as he regained his senses. "Patriarch," shouted Wang Tengfei urgently, flying toward the 10th patriarch. "Teng Fei," said the 10th patriarch, looking over at Wang Tengfei. Suddenly his expression was one of extreme pain. He lifted his hands up to clutch at his head and then let out a miserable shriek. "Don't come near me. The Wang clan. I'm guilty, guilty. I killed everyone in the Wang clan. I killed everyone. All to become immortal. All for immortal ascension. Was it worth it? Was it worth it?" The 10th Wang clan patriarch lifted his head and let out a mad howl, and his face was distorted by intense bitterness. Meng Hao's eyes flashed as he stood off to the side with his second true self. They did not attack, but simply looked on, eyes flickering with killing intent. "I'm guilty. I was the one who personally slaughtered all of my fellow clan members." The 10th Wang clan patriarch howled, and tears streamed down his face. He felt as if his heart were being crushed. He felt regret, helplessness, and insanity swirling around inside his head. The faces of the clan members he had personally killed began to appear around him, and he trembled. His face was awash with indescribable agony. He suddenly turned to look at Meng Hao, head in hands and his eyes bright red. It was all because of you." Every so often, the 10th Wang clan patriarch would regain clarity. Whenever that happened, it was a time of unspeakable guilt and pain. His heart would fill with horror and regret, and the madness that arose from knowing that his hands were stained red with the blood of his fellow clan members made him want to die. But his cultivation base had reached the point that dying was not easy. He made to charge Meng Hao, but Meng Hao dodged to the side, his eyes flickering with coldness. He did not attack, and yet the enmity in his eyes grew deeper. A cold smile appeared on his face. "Want to die?" he asked. "It won't be that easy. How could I let you die? Death squares all accounts, so letting you die would simply be releasing you from your pain and bitterness. I think I'd rather just let you continue living in your madness. Every so often you will wake up and be racked with guilt and pain. That is the vengeance you deserve." The hatred in Meng Hao's eyes burned. He detested the 10th Wang clan patriarch. If it weren't for him, Su Qing would not be in her current situation. He would not have faced so many deadly crises. In fact, considering what had happened in the rebirth cave, he truly had died already. Such enmity was not something that a mere death could wipe away. To force the Wang clan patriarch to live a life of suffering, that was true vengeance. Meng Hao laughed coldly as he backed up. However, it was at this point that the 10th Wang clan patriarch's face once again began to fill with a blank look. He began to smile foolishly, as if amnesia was beginning to wash away all the pain. But Meng Hao couldn't allow him to so easily forget. He raised his hand and pointed out his finger. The 7th demon sealing hex, karmic hexing. He didn't fully employ the art. Instead, he just used the karmic magic to cause the 10th patriarch to be tormented by karma even when he was in a state of senselessness. He infused the karma threads with the lives of the clan members that had been killed. Now, they would constantly pester him, reminding him of his bloodstained hands. He would now always be plagued by the memories of what he had done. Rumble. The 10th Wang clan patriarch's karma threads were thrown into chaos. His body trembled and his eyes filled with tears. Although his expression was blank, he let out a roar of madness. Pain stabbed at his heart and he lost control. Immortal ascension. DD, don't get near me, my soul. Kill, kill, kill you all. Little brother, don't get near me. AGGHHHHHH. Immortal ascension. This chapter was sponsored by Aaron Dewitt, Daniel Parks, QDBUI, Nick Foley, Aaron Embry, Kim Ward, and Bahati Geico. Chapter 763, The Deepest Love. The 10th Wang clan patriarch was already insane, but as of this moment he had sunk even further. He was insane, and yet lucid, unable to control his body or his consciousness. The only thing he could do was constantly relive the destruction of the Wang clan. As of this moment, he could no longer forget the things which he so wanted to forget. From the methods Meng Hao used, it was clear how deeply he hated him. After finishing his work, what Meng Hao felt was not happiness but deep exhaustion. It was an exhaustion that stemmed from the heart, and it made him sigh. He turned to leave. He wanted to be far from this place. He had no further desire to see the 10th Wang clan patriarch. Exacting further revenge was meaningless. Su Qing had less than 100 years to live before she needed to travel to the underworld to be reincarnated. Meng Hao felt blank. He was just turning to leave when Wang Tengfei, his eyes filled with determination, smiled bitterly and took a deep breath. He suddenly flew directly toward the 10th Wang clan patriarch, who hovered in midair, his head in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Immortal ascension. Kill, kill. He was completely immersed in memories of slaughtering his fellow clan members. His soul seemed imprisoned in that particular day, forever doomed to repeat what he had done. Patriarch, cried Wang Tengfei. As soon as he neared, the 10th Wang clan patriarch's eyes gleamed with a fiendish glow. Soul, my soul, he said, staring fixedly at Wang Tengfei. To him, the souls of fellow clan members were an irresistible temptation. He was drawn to them on an instinctual level, believing them something he needed to mend his own soul. It was an instinct he had no control over. His body flashed as he shot toward Wang Tengfei, his hand snaking out to latch onto the top of his head. Wang Tengfei did nothing to evade him. He let the 10th patriarch near, let his hand latch onto his own head. There was even a cracking sound as fingers pierced into his skull. To Wang Tengfei, the intense pain didn't really matter. The 10th Wang clan patriarch's eyes glowed with avarice and madness as he prepared to extract Wang Tengfei's soul and use it to try to mend his own. Meng Hao's mind reeled and he spun around, his eyes flashing. He lifted his right hand, and his second true self immediately shot toward Wang Tengfei. Meng Hao, Wang Tengfei cried, his face twisted and ashen. His body shook as it began to wither. Apparently, all of the essence of his life force was being sucked away as soul nourishment. This is my choice. This is the whole reason I've been searching for the patriarch. Don't interfere. This is Wang Tengfei's choice. His body quivered as his legs were sucked dry. The 10th Wang clan patriarch's eyes gleamed with a strange light and his right hand tightened. My life has no meaning. I'd rather die at the hands of the patriarch than be killed by some other person. Let my soul help to restore his soul. Meng Hao, I don't need you to come save me. There's no need. Let me die in a way that has meaning. I think this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my entire existence. My family, my parents, my big brother, all my clan members. They've already given their souls. I'm the only one left. And now, it's my turn. I can't choose to keep living, Meng Hao, but I can choose how to die. Just leave me alone, don't save me. This is a Wang clan affair, and it has nothing to do with you. Wang Tengfei trembled as the rest of his body withered. His life force poured into the 10th patriarch's soul, causing strands of white mist to rise from where the fingers had pierced him. An expression of struggle could be seen on the face of the 10th Wang clan patriarch. However, the instinct to absorb his fellow clan members did not go away, and he continued to suck away the life force. Wang Tengfei's body began to fall apart, and vast quantities of white mist rose out of his head, his soul. His eyes faded and he seemed to age. It seemed like he had reached the end of his life. He was no longer the perfect, handsome young man that Meng Hao remembered. He was grotesque, nothing more than skin draped over a skeleton. Meng Hao back then. It was all my fault. I just realized it too late. It wasn't until my clan had been exterminated that I realized how aggravating I must have been to everyone. No wonder Yuyan left me. She was right. Meng Hao, my hatred for you is mostly just jealousy and envy. Everything I said after you saved me earlier. Actually, I just didn't want to admit that after everything changed, you were the only person who treated me better than before. Meng Hao? Wang Tengfei looked at Meng Hao, and he seemed reluctant to part with the world. The look in his eye was the same look of wild ambition that had existed before, and the same pride. Meng Hao, I have one last request. Can you please treat Chu Yuyan well? She's a good girl and I don't deserve her. She might seem detached, but inside she's very weak. Meng Hao, since you have my legacy and since you took my good fortune, well then you must keep on going, reach the pinnacle, leave planet South Heaven and climb to the highest heights. That's my dream. You must keep on going. Wang Tengfei chuckled as he realized that he didn't actually hate Meng Hao. Along with his laughter, he suddenly seemed to relax. Apparently, he was losing himself in the wonderful times of the past, in the perfect simplicity of the Reliance sect. He smiled, and then his head sagged and his life ended. His soul was completely extracted by the 10th Wang clan patriarch, who then placed it into his mouth. More tears streamed down the patriarch's face as he violently chomped down on the soul and then swallowed it. Then, he lifted his head up and roared. Immortal ascension! Immortal ascension! Kill, kill! Roaring, he barreled off into the distance, weeping and howling miserably. Meng Hao stood there agape. After it was all over, he closed his eyes for a long time. When he opened them, exhaustion could be seen. Having seen the determination in Wang Tengfei's eyes, he understood. Even if he and Wang Tengfei hadn't run into each other this day, once Wang Tengfei found the 10th Wang clan patriarch, he would still have done the exact same thing. Because the blood of the Wang clan coursed through his veins, the 10th Wang clan patriarch would still have pounced on him and instinctively sucked out his soul. No one could do anything to change that. As for Meng Hao, all he had done was force a bit of lucidity onto the patriarch, to ensure he would eternally regret his actions. In the end, who was really at fault? Was it Meng Hao? He was also a victim. Was it the 10th Wang clan patriarch? Perhaps his pain was greater than anyone's. The Wang clan members were completely innocent. As for Wang Tengfei, his decision was solemn and stirring. Who was at fault? It was an unanswerable question that ran in circles. If blame truly needed to be assigned, perhaps greed was the answer. If the 10th Wang clan patriarch had not lusted after Meng Hao's perfect Tao foundation, then perhaps none of these things would have happened. Karma is a cycle with many twists and turns, murmured Meng Hao. All of a sudden, his understanding of the cause and effect of karma deepened. However, this understanding had come at a terrible price. Meng Hao sighed dejectedly, then slowly turned and made his way off into the distance. Wang Tengfei's final choice was something Meng Hao could never have predicted. As he flew through the air, he recalled the first time he saw Wang Tengfei back in the Reliance sect. He thought about their first battle and the flying rain dragon legacy. Then there was the contest to get into the inner sect, as well as all the events that played out in the southern domain. Everything seemed to have happened so long ago. Right now, Meng Hao knew. The most profound memory of Wang Tengfei would be the words he had spoken moments before he died, and the expression on his face. And that was Wang Tengfei, he murmured softly. He finally returned to the Blood Demon sect, exhausted, immersed in enlightenment regarding karma, and with hands stained red with blood. The first place he went was Blood Prince Gorge. He found Su Qing, then wrapped his arms around her for a long, long time. He buried his head in her fragrant hair and said nothing. Su Qing seemed to understand. She held him, softly patting his back in comfort. He felt worn out. First was the emotional tale of Chen Fan, then the news about his mother. Finally, there was Wang Tengfei and the 10th Wang clan patriarch, and his new understanding of the gravity of karma. Su Qing, I want to sleep, he said softly. Sleep then, she replied gently. I'll stay here with you. He closed his eyes. Su Qing held him. She sat down outside the log cabin in Blood Prince Gorge, and he lay across her legs and slept. She looked down at him and twirled a strand of his hair around her finger. The expression on her face was one of pity and deep love. Meng Hao slept for 2 days. When he finally opened his eyes, it was night. Up above in the darkness, the canopy of stars twinkled brightly, but they couldn't match the beauty of Su Qing's eyes. They were neither as warm and resplendent as her gaze, nor as soft and entrancing as her expression. Meng Hao looked into her eyes, and she looked back. Suddenly, something seemed to click inside Meng Hao's head. The deepest expression of love is simply to stay with someone, he murmured. He suddenly understood why elder brother Chen Fan chose to stand guard over that boulder instead of leaving to practice cultivation. To Chen Fan, simply staying with his beloved was an expression of love. Meng Hao also understood why Wang Tengfei chose to die. To him, it was more important to stay with his clan members and his patriarch. That was his expression of love. It didn't matter if you spoke of love for friends, love for family, or romantic love. The deepest expression of love was simply to stay with someone. You stay with me, I'll stay with you. That was love. For himself, the fact that Su Qing chose to stay with him made him realize what the meaning of love really was. Su Qing, he said, looking at her earnestly, let's have a bonding ceremony. Let's get married. A tremor ran through Su Qing. Her eyelashes trembled and her heart began to pound. To any woman, a wedding is one of the most important occasions in life. Su Qing's cheeks flushed, but she didn't avoid Meng Hao's gaze. She looked back at him and slowly nodded. This chapter was sponsored by Chung Nicholas, an important live streamer mating Gunsang. Chapter 764. The Wedding Stirs the Southern Domain. Meng Hao's Grand Wedding. It only took a few days for news to spread from the Blood Demon sect throughout all the lands of the Southern Domain. Soon, every cultivator in the Southern Domain was talking about it. Within 10 days, the whole continent was in an uproar. Meng Hao's name was now irrefutably famous and illustrious, like a grandiose rainbow, stretching to the far reaches of the sky. Blood Prince of the Blood Demon sect. Peak Dao-seeking clone. Formerly known as Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Because of his various identities, Meng Hao's grand wedding became the focus of attention for all Southern Domain cultivators. There had never been a wedding that caused so much commotion, and likely there would never be another like it. The news was like a gale-force wind that swept across the Southern Domain, causing innumerable minds to tremble. Countless cultivators shook with the desire to attend in person. In fact, those who did qualify to attend were the subject of intense admiration and envy. Did you hear? The Blood Demon sect's Blood Prince Meng Hao is getting married on the 15th of next month. Yeah, of course our sect heard about the grand wedding of His Excellency Meng Hao. Our patriarch even came out of secluded meditation to personally prepare a wedding gift. I bet all the most powerful experts in the entire Southern Domain will be gathering at the Blood Demon sect. Your news is out of date. My master already found out that His Excellency Meng Hao's grand wedding isn't going to be at the Blood Demon sect. It's going to be on the border of the Southern Domain, at some big lake. Meng Hao's wedding was the news everyone was discussing. All the various sects and clans sprang into motion to prepare valuable, remarkable gifts. The wedding date was the 15th of the following month, and the location, a lake on the border of the Southern Domain, was unique enough that people quickly began to analyze its significance. That's where the state of Zhao used to be. A few hundred years ago, the state of Zhao mysteriously disappeared. The only thing left behind was a huge hole in the ground. As time passed, it filled up with water and turned into a lake. That's right, the exalted Meng Hao and his beloved Su Qing are both from the state of Zhao. How fitting for the bonding ceremony to be held there. Even as the discussion raged, the tens of thousands of Blood Demon sect disciples excitedly left the sect and headed happily toward the location of the bonding ceremony, that enormous lake. After arriving, they immediately got to work constructing buildings and decorating the entire region, turning it into something grand and palatial. Meng Hao's wedding was a major event for the Southern Domain. and even more so for the Blood Demon sect. After the determination Meng Hao had shown by putting his life on the line in the war with the four allied powers, all the disciples of the Blood Demon sect burned with fanatical devotion for him. Therefore, the Blood Demon sect disciples, down to the last one, were determined to ensure not the slightest negligence showed in the preparations. Meng Hao knew it was impossible to keep his marriage to Su Qing a secret. It was the most important event in their lives, and they would become bonded cultivators. It was necessary to inform the southern domain. As for the people who attended the ceremony that day, all of them would be distinguished guests. Thus, Blood Demon sect disciples sent invitation cards to the various sects and clans. Any sect or clan who received one would be filled with excitement and incredible pride. However, some locations deserved exceptional treatment. Meng Hao took Su Qing there personally to deliver invitations. The first stop was the Violet Fate sect. The Violet Fate sect's Peak Dao-seeking patriarch, Sun Tao, happily appeared to accept the invitation. After a polite exchange, Meng Hao glanced toward the main peak of the East Pill Division. He and Su Qing both clasped hands and bowed deeply toward Grandmaster Pill Demon's secluded meditation location. Almost at the same moment that Meng Hao bowed, an ancient voice rang out in joyous laughter from the mountain. "Hey, our master will emerge on the day of your wedding. I will be the official witness." Meng Hao trembled and raised his head to look in the direction of the main mountain peak. Next to him, Su Qing smiled shyly and bowed her head. "Many thanks, master," Meng Hao said softly. When he and Su Qing left, something happened that Meng Hao didn't notice, though Su Qing did. On one of the mountain peaks in the East Pill Division stood a woman. She looked sad as she stared silently at Meng Hao and Su Qing. It was Chu Yuan. Her body shivered slightly in the stiff mountain breeze that fluttered her garments. She looked like a goddess, but in that moment her heart felt as if it were sinking into a pit of ice. Coldness engulfed her and pain stabbed through her. She stood there bitterly, and tears streamed down her face. Meng Hao didn't see those tears, but Su Qing did. Su Qing held her tongue as she turned and left with Meng Hao. On another mountain stood Hang Sushan. She wasn't happy either and kicked a rock lying in front of her. The man who stood next to her, Yi Feimu, was even less happy than she was. He glanced over at Hang Sushan, a complex expression in his eyes. He said nothing as he remained standing at her side. Meng Hao and Su Qing also paid a personal visit to the Song clan. Because of the matter of the Song clan patriarch giving him the Jade slip, Meng Hao knew that he owed the Song clan a favor. Patriarch Song would never say anything about it, of course, but the matter was extremely important to Meng Hao. Patriarch Song laughed heartily as he accepted the invitation, then looked at Meng Hao and Su Qing with a long sigh. After they flew off into the distance, a certain woman inside the Song clan cut a lonely figure, standing there by herself. She sighed, but in her heart, she truly wished for Meng Hao and Su Qing to find happiness. That woman was Song Jia. The next stop was the Solitary Sword sect. As soon as they entered, the disciples bowed with extreme respect. They clustered around Meng Hao almost as if he were a patriarch as they escorted him into the sect. Chen Fan was still sitting cross-legged next to the boulder, meditating. When he opened his eyes and saw Meng Hao and Su Qing, he smiled happily. "Congratulations, junior brother. Finally you'll get to hold a beautiful woman in your arms. You know, I could tell way back in the Reliance sect that you had some feelings for junior sister Su. At long last you two are getting married. Well, I think you're a match made in heaven. It's too bad we can't find Grand Elder Aoyang and sect leader He. Although, if they're still in the southern domain, they'll surely hear about the wedding." Chen Fan was overjoyed to see Meng Hao and Su Qing, and laughed more that day than he had in decades. They visited with Chen Fan for a whole day. Before leaving, Meng Hao and Su Qing clasped hands and bowed to the boulder containing Shan Ling, the wife of their brother Chen Fan. In response, the boulder glowed faintly, as if wishing blessings upon them. Finally, Meng Hao and Su Qing went to the Golden Frost sect. Fatty was ecstatic. Not only did he wink salaciously at Meng Hao, he had all of his more than 100 beloved companions come out in a flaunting display. The women extended greetings in tittering, melodic whispers. Meng Hao had a strange expression on his face, and although Su Qing appeared to be smiling, her gaze showed she was not amused. Fatty didn't notice, and regally instructed Meng Hao to be more like himself and collect a few more beloved concubines. "Li Fugui," Su Qing interrupted coolly, "don't forget that it was me who brought you to the Reliance sect that year." Fatty was taken aback. Then he saw Meng Hao's awkward smile, shivered in realization, and quickly changed the topic of conversation. They stayed at the Golden Frost sect for a night, then left. They didn't return to the Blood Demon sect or the lake. Meng Hao took Su Qing to travel through the southern domain like mortals. They didn't fly, they walked, through mountains and past rivers. During the days they strolled together, and at night they slept in each other's arms. They walked through deep mountain ranges and across vast plains, gracing them with the traces of their passage. Occasionally they encountered people, all of whom would immediately clasp hands in greeting. Soon, word began to spread through the southern domain of the beatific sweethearts. During that month, they traveled to many places. Su Qing laughed happily as she accompanied Meng Hao. Meng Hao stopped worrying about cultivation and the future, and focused on relaxing and enjoying Su Qing's company. When the month was up, and their traveling finished, they proceeded toward the enormous lake that occupied the spot where the state of Zhao used to be. The land there had undergone a complete transformation, and now looked like a celestial paradise. In the center of the lake, upon the rippling water, sat an island with jade buildings ringed by ornamental statues and carvings. It was not excessively opulent, but held a great deal of charm. That was where they settled down to wait for the half-month until the day of the wedding. The sound of laughter rang out as tens of thousands of Blood Demon sect disciples bustled about the area surrounding the lake, using magical techniques to transform it completely. Occasionally, the disciples would look over their shoulders toward the island in the middle of the lake, and their faces would fill with fanaticism and benediction. Soon, southern domain cultivators began to show up and gather in the area as they awaited the big day. Meanwhile, in the central region of the southern domain, in a very ordinary town, was a street food stall that sold noodles. Two old men would set up the shop in this particular location around this time every year. Their noodles were quite famous in the area. One of the old men had a stooped back, white hair, and a kindly expression. The other looked a bit younger but still had quite a few gray hairs. When he was younger, he had obviously been quite handsome. The two men would often lounge together and watch the sunset while smoking from long-stemmed pipes. They usually sat in silence and didn't chat much. Day after day, year after year, that was how they spent their time. When they moved to this place, they were middle-aged, but as time went by, they had grown old. On one particular evening, when the evening was being replaced by night, and the twinkle of lamplight began to spread throughout the town, the stooped old man suddenly put his pipe down. "Should we go?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The other old man next to him also put down his pipe. "You were the one who took a liking to him all those years ago. You paid a heavy price for the kid without a word of complaint. Now he's famous. Probably couldn't be any more famous, actually. When the wedding day comes, maybe I could decide not to attend, but could you really stay away?" The stooped old man laughed and then stood up. "All right, it's settled. We're going. I could tell as soon as I looked at that pup that he had potential." "Well, fine," said the other man. "Neither of us have much longevity left. Let's go see all the kids, then we will have accomplished everything and can die content." The two old men exchanged a glance, then disappeared laughing off into the night. These two were none other than Grand Elder Aoyang and He Luohua from the Reliance sect. All those years ago, Grand Elder Aoyang had already been running low on longevity. That he was still alive now indicated he had run into some sort of good fortune since then. Similar scenes played out in the Black Lands. Meng Hao's grand wedding had sent all the lands astir. Chapter 765, Seventh Year Tribulation. The great tribes in the Black Lands were also focused on the southern domain right now. The matter of the four allied powers besieging the Blood Demon sect and the events afterward in which the Blood Demon sect unified the southern domain were all well known. When Meng Hao's name rose to prominence, the Golden Crow clan in the Black Lands was especially excited. When news arrived of Meng Hao's grand marriage, the clan chief personally led a number of clan members out of the Black Lands to attend the ceremony and offer wedding gifts. The other great tribes also did the same. Last but not least, the Church of the Golden Light called out their signature catchphrase as they ran toward the southern domain, surrounded by a swirling fog. Meanwhile, in the eastern lands, in the Fang clan ancestral mansion, was a tall tower. It looked very similar to Tower of Tang, although it was roughly 30 meters taller. 1. As I've mentioned before, I convert the ancient Chinese measurements into metric. The tower is 9 zhang taller, and as we all know, 9 is a significant number in Chinese culture and ISSDH. It was 30 meters taller than each, and every one of the other towers of Tang throughout the southern domain. Within the tower stood a man and a woman in the middle of a fierce argument. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she looked off in the direction of the southern domain and Meng Hao. We left him before his 7th birthday. He faced grave danger so many times in the southern domain and we didn't help him. We didn't even dare to get near him. I shouldn't have gone to see him at the Song clan, but he's my son. He's our son. His Tao Foundation was stolen in the Milky Way Sea, and I knew we couldn't go help him, but that didn't ease the stabbing pain in my heart. Then Su Qing gave up so much for him in the rebirth cave. I saw everything that happened. Everything. I like that girl. Now he's getting married and I'm going. The woman looked over at the man, her eyes flashing with determination. The man trembled, sadness filling his eyes. His heart also felt stabs of pain. However, there was nothing he could do but endure them and place all his hopes on what would happen in the future. Just wait a little bit longer, Lily One. Lily is a repetition of the character Li Chinese letter from Meng Li's name, the man murmured. He trembled and gripped the column next to him until his knuckles turned white. Can't you just wait a bit longer? We suffered untold hardships to bring him here and give him a chance to live. Once he reaches Tao Seeking, then the danger will be past. Tao Seeking, that's all. Just a little more waiting. The day he enters Tao Seeking, we'll go together. We'll explain everything together. Deep love could be seen in the man's eyes as he looked off into the distance. We can't make any mistakes, he continued. If we fail this time, Lily, the 4th life, the 7th year tribulation, can you really bear such pain again? I'm his father and he is our child. It was for him that both of us swore Tao oaths to guard the door of South Heaven for 100,000 years and not step foot out of South Heaven for that entire time. All of that was for this one chance. Just keep waiting. The man closed his eyes. For his son, he would gladly sacrifice his life, his everything. 7th year tribulation. More tears streamed down the woman's face as she recalled the bitter memories of the past. But so many years have already passed. Spirit severing stabilizes the soul and Tao Seeking lays the blood to rest, the man murmured, and it was hard to tell whether he was talking to the woman or to himself. Every day before Tao Seeking is another day that the 7th year tribulation remains unneutralized. His body is already at Tao Seeking. All that remains is his cultivation base. Soon, the day will come. Soon. The wedding day approached. With the bonding ceremony only 5 days away, more than 1 million cultivators had already amassed in the northern reaches, adjacent to the Milky Way Sea. Vicious beasts, wicked spirits, powerful experts. It all transformed into something like a cyclone that could sweep across everything in astonishing fashion. Tao-seeking patriarchs from various clans, tribes, and sects flew up into the air. 11 astonishing figures who then stared out at the Milky Way Sea, toward the southern domain which lay beyond the horizon. The chance for immortality lies in the southern domain. The southern domain has just faced incredible misfortune. They are at their weakest now, and could never imagine that our army would appear now. This is an incredibly rare opportunity. In this war, we will exterminate their Tao-seeking experts, slaughter their spirit-severing cultivators, eradicate all of their nascent soul disciples. As for core formation, they don't really matter. Shatter their foundation, cut off their chance for immortality, and then we can occupy the southern domain. We can gain enlightenment about immortal destiny, and we can become immortals. In this war, we, the allied forces of the northern reaches, with the help of the Resurrection Lily, will definitely seize control of everything. Strike fast and hard. Don't give the eastern lands a chance to interfere. These 11 Tao-seeking experts were all adorned in different attire. Some were covered in tattoos. Others were festooned in bone accoutrements that emanated black light. Some wore Taoist robes. However, all possessed incredible power. They hovered in midair looking out at the Milky Way Sea. Suddenly, an incredible roaring filled the air. There was no wind, but massive waves still rolled out across the sea. The Milky Way Sea's 4th ring, 3rd ring, 2nd ring, all the areas in the entire sea outside the inner ring were covered with huge waves. The disciples of the 3 great sects in the 3rd ring were utterly astonished. The cultivators who lived on the various islands in the sea could hear the roaring and were shocked. This was not the ordinary roar of the sea, but was filled with a monstrous, murderous air. The water surged up, as if some colossal creature was attempting to rise from the depths. As everyone looked around in astonishment, deep in the dark recesses of the 2nd ring, a gargantuan resurrection lily was writhing like mad. This was the source of the roaring that filled the Milky Way Sea. Rumbling echoed out constantly as the gigantic resurrection lily began to grow, almost without limit. It took only 10 or so breaths for massive tentacles, each 30 meters thick, to rise from within the second ring. Seawater poured off them as they shot up over the sea. The tentacles emitted a shocking aura as they sped through the air. At the same time, countless smaller tentacles spread out along the seafloor. When they reached the waters of the third ring, they too shot up into the air. More tentacles spread out, piercing into the stormwind divide that separated the third and fourth rings. If you stood high up in the sky where the entire Milky Way Sea was visible, you would see more than 100,000 tentacles spreading out. It appeared as if a fearsome presence lurked beneath the waters. Of course, it was none other than the resurrection lily. The resurrection lily grew rapidly, growing larger until finally, to the astonishment of all the cultivators, it rose up completely from the water. The tentacles merged, braiding together. They formed a bridge. It was a bridge, one side of which was formed from 50,000 tentacles, more than 1,500 kilometers across. Shockingly, this part of the bridge neared the southern domain, but didn't touch it. The other side of the bridge arced out to connect to the northern reaches. In the middle of the two sides was a huge resurrection lily so large you could scarcely see from one side to the other, dripping vast quantities of water as it rose. The scene was indescribably shocking and astonishing. A gigantic flower had risen up to form a bridge with its branches and leaves, a bridge that connected two great continents. The greatest difficulty in waging war between these regions had been transporting troops, but now that problem was solved, and the Great War could begin at any time. Rumbling filled the air as the Resurrection Lily Bridge appeared. The more than 1 million Northern Reaches cultivators lifted their heads and roared. The 11 Tao-seeking experts waved their hands, and the cultivators headed directly toward the bridge. The evil spirits were behind the cultivators, followed by the mountain-like giants, as well as countless wild beasts. All of them charged onto the Resurrection Lily Bridge, where they used all the speed they could muster, as well as some of the built-in teleportation features of the bridge, to proceed forward. Soon, the distance between them and the southern domain was rapidly reduced. They would only need a few days to reach the southern domain. The wedding day got closer. The big lake that had been the state of Zhao was now decorated with lanterns and brightly colored decorations. Tables were set up all around, and Blood Demon sect disciples circulated to entertain the guests. Sounds of happy laughter and cheerful voices permeated the air. Chen Fan arrived, as did Fatty, along with Meng Hao's friends from the Violet Fate sect, all of whom had rushed there as fast as possible. Su Qing's smile grew more and more beautiful. When she looked at Meng Hao, the warm look in her eyes seemed like it could thaw even the coldest ice. Meng Hao was also smiling, although sometimes he seemed at his wits' end, not quite sure what to do or where to go. Thankfully, the Blood Demon sect spirit-severing patriarchs were familiar with weddings and did their best to manage affairs properly. There was also Fatty, who had already been formally united with more than 100 beloved concubines. With all their advice and help, Meng Hao was kept quite busy with the formalities. In the end, Chu Yuyan came too. She arrived with a smile that seemed sincerely congratulatory. However, deep in her heart she felt frustration and disappointment. When Meng Hao ran into her, he opened his mouth to say something, but in the end all he could do was sigh. Su Qing pulled Chu Yuyan off to the side, where they began to confer quietly. Hank Sushan and Song Jia also came. Soon all the women, along with Fatty's beloved concubines, made their way to the island in the center of the lake, after which the twitter of their voices could often be heard floating out from within. A few days later, the big day arrived, and wedding bells tolled cheerfully. Starting at dawn, countless honored guests flowed in from sects and clans all over the southern domain. Soon it became apparent there weren't enough banquet tables, even though more than 100,000 had been prepared. There was standing room only, everyone packed tightly together as far as the eye could see. There were even cultivators hovering in the air far off in the distance. Even without a seat, they still wanted to watch the bonding ceremony and cheer their congratulations. Spirit-severing cultivators and Tao-seeking experts were all present. As the wedding bells rang out, a violet streak appeared in the air. It was an old man in a violet robe, ancient and dignified. However, a kind smile covered his face, and the aroma of medicinal pills wafted around him. As soon as Meng Hao caught sight of him, a tremor ran through his body and he flew into the air. In front of all the other cultivators present, he clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Greetings, master." The old man was none other than Pill Demon. He looked at Meng Hao contentedly and with love. Laughing, he helped Meng Hao to straighten up. "Today is your grand wedding, and I'm here to bear official witness.